for the record button to start, inshallah. Alright, we're about to start. Just so you know, this microphone is very sensitive, so if you guys are even having a private conversation, it will pick you up. Just letting you know. Alright, which is good, so we can capture your questions if you have questions, okay? Alright, we started. Alright. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. So welcome to the Khutba training workshop. Alhamdulillah, this is a collaboration between California Islamic University and MSA West. So alhamdulillah, how many of you are coming from MSA West? How many of you are coming from, you heard about this event through CIU? And you heard about it through MSA West? 3. Okay, alhamdulillah. All right, good. And I think we have some online people, right? We got so far 2 other people online. Okay, very good. So let's get right into it. All right, so let me tell you about my first khutbah that I ever gave. All right, it was, I don't even know how long ago it was. I'm not that old, but it was probably like over 15 years ago. So I got a call one day and someone said that we are having a khutbah in our private household. It's like a very large home, and they wanted to schedule a khutbah in their home, and it was Eid day. So the first khutbah that I've ever given was an Eid khutbah, which is definitely not recommended to start with the Eid khutbah because it's much larger, it's more difficult. It's actually, no, you know what? It wasn't an Eid khutbah, alhamdulillah. It was a khutbah on the day of Eid, right? So it was a khutbah on the day of Eid. So it was the day of Eid, and they wanted to have a khutbah because some masjids in the area, they don't do khutbah when it's Eid is on a Friday, okay? We're not going to talk about the opinions on that right now. Some other day. But alhamdulillah, that was the first khutbah I've ever given. So they called me up and they're like, we've seen that you've given like a few talks in the masjid here and there. Why don't you come and give the khutbah? We need someone to give this khutbah. So I've never given a khutbah in my life. I have no idea what I'm doing. My knowledge is very minimal of Islam. I didn't even really attend any classes. I just read a few books on Islam, and all of a sudden I'm being requested to give khutbah. So I have to go and I have to ask the local imam, like, hey, can you tell me what I'm supposed to say? What exactly is the requirement? Do I have to read all the stuff that you read? Am I pronouncing it correctly? Can you write it down for me? All of that stuff. So this is what happened to me. Alhamdulillah, it went okay. But the point is, this happens to many, many people. They get asked to give a khutbah just kind of out of nowhere, and their qualifications are almost nothing, their experience is almost nothing, their training is almost nothing, but there's an absolute need to give that khutbah because they can't find anyone else. And in our community, that's very common in Southern California, and probably in many different parts of America. Now some places, it's not like that. So I was in London, and I met one of my friends, and he graduated from Azhar University. He's a knowledgeable person. He's wise. He's a good speaker. And it was Friday. So I'm like, hey, I'm sitting in London. I want to go attend like a nice khutbah. So I asked him, I said, where are you giving khutbah? He goes, no, I'm not giving khutbah. I said, oh, okay. Well, where do you usually give khutbah? He goes, I don't give khutbah. I said, I got really upset. I'm like, man, I'm going to give you a pep talk right now. You know how important it is that we need good khatibs, we need people to give a khutbah properly, and they need to get correct knowledge. And after my entire talk, he says, I'm not giving khutbah, not because I'm not willing to do it. It's because in London, all the masjids have an imam. Almost all the small masjids, large masjids, they have an imam, and the imams give khutbah. So we don't have that issue. So the thing is, I was surprised because in Southern California, 80% of masjids don't have an imam, and basically we get calls every Thursday night, right? Sometimes Shura Council, other places, they get calls on Thursday nights, or sometimes Thursday morning, sometimes Friday morning. We need a khatib, we don't have a khatib. Or the other khatib canceled, or the other guy can't make it, or something like that, and we have absolutely no one available. So there is a huge demand for khatibs. Demand in the sense that there's a need. There's places where a khutbah needs to occur And it can't occur because no one knows how to give the khutbah. And sometimes what you'll find is that if a khatib is either stuck in traffic, or there's a traffic jam, or they couldn't make it, or they got sick, they make an announcement inside the masjid. Say, who knows how to give a khutbah? And the funny thing is, if you were to go and make that announcement in most places, you're not going to find a single person who actually knows how to give khutbah properly, correctly. I mean, even correctly. Forget effectively. Correctly. They don't know. And that's a problem. That's a problem that we find. That's a problem we find even when it comes to leading prayer. What happens if the imam doesn't show up, or the second imam, backup imam doesn't show up? You look around, who knows how to lead prayer correctly? Who can actually pronounce? You look in the entire audience, you're like, oh boy, no one really. So we just have Uncle so-and-so, come, he's the eldest in the community. He's led a few times. Let's go ahead and let him lead. So there's a problem. There's a shortage. And it's not changed in 15 years. It's not changed in the past 20 years. The shortage continues because the number of places that need a khutbah continues to expand. Okay? So it's a good problem to have, but it's a problem that needs to be solved, right? Whereas churches are shutting down around the place. Many of the masjids that are purchased, they're actually former churches. In fact, this building, even CIU's campus, this was a church in a business commercial area, and no one else wanted to buy it because it's in a commercial area. So we're like, for us, that's perfect. We got a really good deal on it. So it worked very well, and we got the religious zoning. So we have a problem with zoning, right? So the issue is there's religious zoning, there's commercial zoning, there's residential zoning. The problem is because of Islamophobia, it's hard for Muslims to get zoning approved that you're allowed to build a religious place here. If a church wants to build, it's easier to get approved. If you want to build a mosque, a synagogue, oh, no problem. Mosque, ooh, maybe is a problem. So what do? Smart Muslims, the ones who are intelligent, they're like, either we make really good friendships in the city, or we just buy a church which already has zoning, and if they try and take our zoning away, we got very good precedent for a lawsuit against the city. Right, so that's why we keep buying up churches. All right, so alhamdulillah. So it's just a good problem to have, but we need more khatib. So the situation has not changed. So is there a need for speakers? Absolutely. There's definitely a need for speakers, depending on where you are. You go to some other country, you go to like a city which just has so many people who are qualified to give the sermon, to give the khutbah. Great, no problem. But in our community, and many people, I think, from Northern California are joining us as well, right? And maybe some from some other parts. They need speakers on a regular basis. But now it's changed. It's not only the masjid anymore. Now, like I mentioned, the Thursday night calls. Now we got khutbahs in high school. We got khutbahs on college campuses. Not only in the masjid, we got little musallas. A musalla is like a place where some of the prayers are prayed, not regularly. It's not a fully permanently established place. You got khutbahs in hospitals, you got khutbahs in jail, and you got khutbahs in prison. And there's a lack of qualified khatibs in all of these places. Every single one. I was just at UCLA on Friday. There's a khutbah on UCLA campus, and then there's another khutbah in the UCLA hospital. And we actually walked from here to here for lunch. It's like a 5 to 10 minute walk. It's not far at all, walking. Right? But for whatever reasons, because of their staff, they're not able to take a break. They have to be on call, all sorts of things. They have to have a separate khutbah there. Now, who's qualified to give the khutbah? Again, it becomes a problem. So there's definitely a need for people who are qualified to give khutbah. Even if you're not planning on giving khutbah, even if you don't want to always, it's a good backup skill to have. Because one day, maybe the khatib doesn't make it, and they need someone to, be the backup person. That could be you. So you should be qualified. It's a good skill set to learn, okay? And there's a lot of places who want to offer the khutbah, but they cannot. They want to open it up, they're not able to do it. And sometimes you get circumstances where students are on campus, they cannot make it to the masjid because it's finals week. And it's a very important final exam. And they're like, what can we do? If we make it to the masjid, we won't make it back to the final. And the teacher didn't allow us to get an exception, and we don't want to go through the whole process and everything. Well, there's a solution for them. In the middle of the final, they can take a break, or right before the class, they can go outside and they can do the khutbah with like the 5 Muslim students that are there in that class. or get a few more to meet up, and you could do the khutbah right outside, and it'll count for your Jummah, because you're not supposed to be missing Jummah prayer if you're male. We're going to talk about that ruling. So that's a possibility, but it's only a possibility if you know how to give khutbah. It's not a possibility if none of them know how to give khutbah. They're like, oh, we'll praise Lahore prayer. So there's a lot of places who want to offer. They can't, because there's a lack of qualified khatibs who have knowledge and have an understanding. So somebody has to do it. Okay, somebody has to fulfill this responsibility. Even if you may not be the most qualified person, or even a minimally qualified person, there's a statement that says, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. You guys, if you get that, basically, you may not be the most qualified or the best khatib, but if there's nobody else and they're all less qualified than you, you happen to be the most qualified person in that audience, then the responsibility falls on you. So don't think that you're super qualified or something like that, but still, you still have to do it. There's nothing wrong with you doing it if you're the most qualified among that group of people due to the shortage. All right, so the purpose of this seminar, or the purpose of this workshop, is going to be, we're going to try to help fulfill a need that exists in the community. Some of you are already giving khutbahs, some of you are not. And if you are, I want to motivate you to give more khutbahs when you can. And if you're not, I want to motivate you to give khutbahs. And even if you can't, I want to motivate you to at least be the backup person. And you're ready. If there's a need, you'll be ready to step up and fill that need, inshallah. Also, to train current khatibs. Like I said, if you're already a khatib, there's additional training that's needed. So let me talk a little bit about that. There's 3 aspects of giving a khutbah that's needed. Number 1 is knowledge. Having the knowledge of how to correctly perform the khutbah with all the rules and potential things that can happen. This is extremely important. And many khatibs, and I'll tell you myself, when I gave my first khutbah, or my first 10 khutbahs, I did not know really all the rules. And I'm sure I was making a mistake here or there, or something could have easily happened where I would have made a mistake and it would have been a serious mistake. And then afterwards, I'll talk to you about that. So, first thing is knowledge. Okay, knowledge is extremely important. So let me tell you a story of one brother in our community. He was very active in the MSA. And I'm not trying to put MSA down or anything. MSA is cool, alhamdulillah. Very involved, public figure in the MSA, involved in MSA West. Probably some of you even know him very well. You probably have a high regard for him. He had given at least 50 khutbahs. Until one day, randomly, he happened to have a meeting with me, and he walked into the masjid, and I was finishing up a class. And he said, okay, before my meeting with Sheikh Mustafa, let me sit down for this class. He's already teaching a class. And it just so happened, it was a class on Islamic law, it was a class on purification, and he sat down, and he starts listening, and we happened to be covering ghusl. Ghusl basically is where you have to wash your entire body after you've had intercourse or after you've had a wet dream or something like that. So he's listening, comes, okay. Then he comes into my office for the appointment, and he's like, man, this is a really good class. I think I might, consider, maybe joining this class. This is really good. I said, yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm sure you know kind of some of this stuff. He's like, no, this is some of the stuff I didn't even know. Like this ghusl, like after intercourse, you gotta actually wash your entire body, right? And I was just like, bro, this guy's given over 50 khutbahs. He's considered to be a Muslim leader among the youth. He's involved in MSA West. He's giving speeches around the country. He's being flown in to give speeches in different parts of the country. And he doesn't know that you have to make ghusl or take an entire bath after intercourse or after having a wet dream. Now imagine, he may have been giving khutbah, with not even this. So this is a major problem, right? So and it's not surprising either, because the guy's a great speaker, great personality. He reads a little bit about Islam, but he's kind of skipped this subject, and no one taught him that. And this is not uncommon, and it's not surprising, to be honest with you. It's not surprising because most of the people who are very passionate speakers, who are really interested in Islam, they usually came back to Islam when they were adults. So that means they didn't get a very good Islamic education when they were young. So what ends up happening, there's a lot of gaps in their knowledge. And now they become very passionate about Islam, they become passionate speakers, but they miss out some very, very crucial things. And that's very dangerous. So that's a kind of an extreme story, but it's a real story. Other people may be missing out on some other things, making some other mistakes here and there, okay? So knowledge is very important, even for current khatibs. The second part of the khutbah that's needed is the content. The content of a khutbah has to really be down, because if the content is not correct, it's not valid, it can actually harm people. So there's a masjid in Orange County here, and I'm not going to mention names here, names of masjid, but there was a masjid here. And one guy came and he gave a khutbah that he had a dream about him being in paradise, and he saw the Prophet ﷺ in his dream, and he saw the Hurul Ain, which is the women of paradise, okay? And he starts describing what he saw in graphic detail, and he says, you know, in their chest they had the name of Allah written across it, and they had this and all of this, and it was probably one of the worst khutbahs, you know, ever, right? It's totally inappropriate, but you don't mention some random dream that you had, and there was no lesson, there was no moral lesson to be derived from it, except he said, I was trying to convince people, you know, that they should want Jannah, because they should want paradise because of what he saw in his dream. Right? And we've seen, I mean, there's some of the worst examples of khutbahs. People bring in weird stories and other things about their own life or something else that happened. The content of the khutbah has to be accurate, number one, and it needs to be beneficial. It should not be harmful. And if you have either something that's incorrect, it'll harm people, or if you have something that is just useless, it's going to harm people, because they're going to be like, this is what Islam is. And if you ask the majority of Muslims, if you were to do a survey across America and say, how many of you find that the khutbah is beneficial for you, right? What percentage do you think would say, you know, yes, I find the khutbah every week to be something beneficial. It helps me love Islam, appreciate Islam, and be a better Muslim. How many? What would you think? Just random number. Just throw out some numbers. Be honest.
50%.
50%. 30%.
I think it's a lot lower.
Just give me
I'd go 15%.
15%. Okay.
10, maybe even 10.
Maybe even 10. Maybe even 10. What else?
20%.
20. So we're looking at 80%, 90%, at least 50% of khutbahs around the country, they suck. Right? Just to put it very clearly, right? They suck. And people don't benefit from them at all, pretty much. They don't even really want to go to the khutbah, because it's that bad, right? So the content of the khutbah has to be something which is actually beneficial for people. They're actually going to benefit from it, okay? And that falls into the third part of the khutbah, and that's delivery, right? Delivery is extremely important. So if you can have good content, you can have good knowledge, but if your delivery stinks, if your delivery sucks, then again, same thing. People are not going to benefit from that khutbah. And delivery is very important as well. So there's a khutbah where people will come. We have non-Muslims attending our khutbah on a regular basis. Sometimes someone will come, and the non-Muslims will come to me and say, you know what? I didn't understand a thing that guy said. Like, I'm like, did you pay attention to the khutbah? I don't know anything he said. Like, was he speaking? Like, was that he speaking in English, or I heard a lot of Arabic, but I don't know what the rest of it was. Doesn't know anything, right? That's how bad the khutbah became, because the delivery was poor. So the thing is, this is the order we want to build our khatibs to focus on. First, your knowledge of Islam has to be solid, right? You need to, at least as an act of worship, the khutbah needs to be delivered correctly. Number two, the content needs to be accurate, solid, and beneficial. That's number 2 milestone. And then number 3, your delivery has got to be good, so you can actually benefit people. Now, some people have it flipped around. Some people have awesome delivery, poor knowledge, poor content. And guess what happens? They get invited to give khutbah a lot more than the people who have knowledge and content. Understandably so. It's understandable why that's happening. But ideally, it's supposed to be all three. Because in the past, during the time of the Sahaba, during the time of the companions, during the time of the early Muslims, they always had all three. The khutbah is supposed to have all three. And I'm going to talk to you why that is. Okay? So that's really important. And those of you who are already good speakers, you can benefit from this workshop by trying to become great. And the more you practice, the more you improve, the better you will become. What ends up happening to a lot of people who are experienced, they kind of plateau. And the reason why they plateau is because they just keep on giving more and more khutbahs, but they don't actually try to improve on their delivery by either taking speech classes or seminars or public speaking workshops and things like that, and they help. Trust me, they really, really do help. So experience helps a lot, but also learning from people who are more experienced and those who are better, it helps even more. So people should try to improve and become even better. Okay, so let's be optimistic. Some of you doubt that you can ever speak. How many of you are afraid of public speaking? Just be honest. Anyone afraid? None. Only one person's afraid. Alhamdulillah. So the rest of you are quite confident, or you're just so scared that you don't want to raise your hand. So you're afraid of raising your hand even. Alhamdulillah. So some of you may doubt that it's possible. The reality is, most of the world's population, they're afraid to speak. Okay, in public. And the reality is, you should not be afraid. You're naturally going to be afraid, but you can overcome that fear. Okay, some people they're able to speak in front of people, which is natural. Some people, it's something acquired. It takes time, it takes effort. They need to overcome some of these barriers, and it can be overcome if you put the effort into it. Okay, here's the way to look at it. If you're afraid, and those of you who are online watching the seminar later, if you're afraid of speaking publicly, you guys got to ask yourself, what makes me afraid? You kind of rationalize it. If you can sit down and have a normal conversation with one person sitting in front of you, then you can do the same thing if you stand up and you have 10 people in front of you. So nothing changes. The only difference is what's really happened is you went from sitting down to standing up, and you went from speaking to one person to speaking to 10 people, or 100 people, or 100,000 people, right? The only thing that changes is how nervous you get, and you're thinking, what are they going to think about me? And your expectations change, but what about that one person? What are they going to think about you, right? So you can overcome that. It's really in your mind. People think that, some people are just born speakers, some are not born speakers. That's not the reality. Most people who speak publicly, and they're good at it, they weren't just born that way. They actually acquired these skills over time. Okay? And I can even mention my own story. I'll summarize this. I used to be very shy. In high school, I used to not be able to talk in front of an audience, and eventually I joined the debate team. And something happened along the way, and I said, I'm going to take this seriously. I started speaking, and things went well. We started winning debate competitions, and I got all this practice. So going from shy, I'm still kind of shy. It's just by my nature. As they say, extrovert, introvert. I'm more of an introvert, right? Which is a problem, by the way, because the problem is that most people who go and study Islam and end up becoming imams, they are by nature introverts. Because the ones who go and study, they tend to be more introverted because they go and they do all the research and they read, they go through all the academia and everything. But now they come back and they're supposed to give awesome talks. And extroverts usually have much better public speaking skills naturally. So you have to build those things as well. So that's one of the challenges. But look, if I can do it, you can do it. And that's the reality. And if other people can do it, you can do it as well. You just got to put the work in. You got to put the time in. You got to build that. You got to build it slowly, and you need to get experience. Okay? So, now that we have some of the other people kind of joining in and everything, let's introduce ourselves, okay? So quick introductions. Bismillah. Tell me name, age, and if you've ever given khutbah before.
So my name is Hassan Khan. I'm 21 years old and I have given a khutbah.
How many khutbahs you given?
Quite a few.
How many?
5, 7, 8.
7, 8? Good. Alhamdulillah.
I have to do this very well.
Yes, Alhamdulillah. Bismillah.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Taha. I'm 28 and I've never given a khutbah before.
Okay. But you're ready, inshallah.
Sorry?
But you're ready, inshallah.
Sure.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Huzaifa Sinji. I'm 20 years old and I have given a khutbah.
One?
No, probably around like 10 to maybe 20.
10 to 20. Okay, good.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Faisal Bukhari. I am around 40 years old and I have given 3 khutbahs and those were all just ad hoc. It just suddenly came up and they put me on the spot.
You gave 3 backup khutbahs.
Yeah.
All right, good. On the spot.
On the spot.
Alhamdulillah. Good.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Muhammad Ibrahim. I'm 21 years old and I'm probably like 15 to 20.
15 to 20. Good.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Nail Hafiz. I used to give khutbahs in high school because I was kind of the knowledgeable one in the room, but after high school and college, I kind of stopped.
Okay. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hamza. I'm 17 and I've never given a khutbah.
Okay. But you're ready,
Yeah.
inshallah. Good.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Muhammad Mukhtar. I'm 26 and I haven't given a khutbah yet.
Okay. But you're ready, inshallah.
Right.
I'm Frank and I'm 41. I've given khutbahs, but in Christianity. I've never given them in Islam.
Okay. So you've given a Sunday sermon before?
Yeah.
Okay. How many?
More than 20.
More than 20. Okay. Good. Excellent.
I'm Zakib, I'm 40, and I never gave any khutbah. I always wanted to though, but I was never qualified.
Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, you'll be soon.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Basil. I'm the oldest. I never gave khutbah before.
Alhamdulillah.
My name's Hassan, I'm 28. I've always wanted to give a khutbah, and then I gave one, and then never wanted to do it again.
Okay.
I gave 4, and then I hung up my hat and said.
You gave 4?
I gave 4.
Okay.
And then
Retired. Early retirement. Okay.
I kind of stepped away and felt like it's just not the time yet.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, good. That's what this workshop's for, man. Inshallah.
How we doing? My name is Nuh. 36. Kind of the same story, but when I gave the khutbah, I was a teenager. But I've never given a khutbah since then.
To the sermon? You gave the sermon?
Yeah.
In a church?
It was khutbah.
Oh, it's khutbah. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So you were a teenager?
I was a teenager.
Okay. You gave how many? 1?
Just 1.
Okay.
And I never gave a khutbah again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Good. All right. And those of you who are online, you can actually introduce yourself on the chat. So there's a chat there. You can type your name in there and let us know who you are. Let me show you how to do it. Yeah, I typed salam wrong. That's pretty bad. All right, so there we go. Now it's fixed. All right, so yeah, those of you who are online, just introduce yourself, inshallah, and we can take a look. All right, so let's start with the first part, inshallah. The first thing to do is if you're going to give a khutbah, you want to schedule that khutbah. So you get a phone call or you initiate and you tell some place that, you know what, I'm available for khutbah. Either way, what do? So the first thing that's going to happen is you talk to the person who's going to be setting up the khutbah. You ask them what time is the khutbah going to start exactly, what time is it going to end, and more specifically, what time should the prayer start, what the iqamah, which is, so there's 2 khutbahs and then there's a prayer. So what time you want me to start speaking, what time you want me to stop speaking, and then we're going to start the prayer. Right? And then you should also ask him what time does the prayer need to end by completely. Right? So usually what ends up happening here in Southern California, most khutbahs start around 1:10 p.m. Some of them start at 1 o'clock, some of them start at 1:05, some at 1:10, some at 1:15. These are the most common timings that most masjids have, unless they're giving like a second khutbah or something like that. And most of them are looking for 20 to 30 minutes of a khutbah, speaking wise, and they're looking for about 5 minutes to 10 minutes of prayer. So usually if they start around 1:10, they'll give you a deadline that Everything needs to be wrapped up. Prayer should be finished. The second Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah should be done by 1:40. Some say 1:45. Right? So you need to find out what that number is, and you need to stick to it. And the reason why it's so important to stick to it is because people have things to do. Right? People have to go back to work. Friday is not a holiday. So people could potentially get fired because you extended the khutbah too long. And the flip side of that is that some people, they cannot make it to the khutbah in time, and they want to at least catch the prayer. Either they get stuck in traffic, some of them just come late, because they're lazy and they don't want to attend the khutbah. Leaving them aside, there are some legitimate cases. You get stuck in traffic, cannot find parking, whatever it is. They want to at least catch the khutbah. So if you finish the khutbah at 1:35 and the prayer at 1:35, the guy walks in at 1:36, he just missed the entire khutbah, right? So now it's going to be difficult. So it's very important to time it right and get it within a time frame that you've been given. So if the time frame you've been given is 1:45, prayer should be done, you can finish 1:40, you're good to go. But if they say a hard stop at 1:45, you finish at 1:45 or 5 minutes before, not 5 minutes after. You got to make sure you get that specific timing, because there's reasons why they come out, especially with Islamic centers or places where they know what they're doing. When they put the timing, they understand the right time because there's a parking situation or there's a second shift coming in. You need to time it right. If you time it wrong, things can go really bad. All right? So it doesn't matter what you think, but I had more material, or I had something really important to say, or I started late. It doesn't matter. You got to finish on time. Okay? Very, very important. How many of you have ever been to a khutbah where they didn't finish on time and you were annoyed because you had something very important to do? All right, that's what I thought. So think about that when you're giving the khutbah. You don't want to be causing people that aggravation. Number 2, you should ask, how are traffic conditions? So if you're giving khutbah in a distant place and you've never been there before, your responsibility is to ask them, what is traffic like? So if you're giving a khutbah in Riverside or in Corona from here, and you've never experienced the 91 freeway on a Friday, and you're used to going west from Orange County, you're going to see a different world that you've never seen before, right? So you're used to you're driving south from here to here, it's not a problem. It takes 30 minutes. No, it takes 30 minutes on a normal day, normal freeway. But it takes an hour or hour and a half on a different day on a different freeway. So you should ask, how does traffic generally look like? And one of the things you can check is check one of these traffic apps. One of them is Waze. I know there's a whole debate about, Waze being Israeli servers in Israel, and they sold to Google and all of that stuff. Regardless, I still believe it's fine to use the app. They have a go later option. So what you do is you put the address in Waze, and it says you want to go now or you want to go later. You can put go later, and you put the time that you're planning on going, and it'll tell you the approximate traffic based upon the past experience of what it's going to look like. And that's very important to know. So, if you're going and normally your map app says it's a 1 hour drive, yeah, but that's without proper, accurate assessment of traffic at that time, right? So if you look at your map app and you're like, oh, you check at 6 a.m. in the morning when you wake up, I got khutbah today. How long is it going to take me to get there? It says 1 hour. Yeah, but at 11 o'clock when you leave or 12 o'clock, it's going to be 2 hours. So you have to make sure to take that into consideration, all right? So it's your responsibility. It's not the masjid's responsibility, right, to sit there and say, by the way, we're going to give you traffic updates live. It's not going to happen. It's your job to get there on time.
So just one thing, Google Maps also has this, but not in the app. It's in the desktop.
It's in the desktop version, yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, and I think it's not as accurate though, too. Yeah.
Will we be able to get these slides later?
Yeah, I can send out the slides, inshallah. Okay. Also, you want to make sure to leave early, because there can be accidents that happen, right? And what's going to happen is if you're going and giving khutbah and there's no backup khatib, like that's why we're doing this, right? You just messed up the entire thing for everyone because you didn't leave a little bit early. So you don't want to be late. If it's raining, you want to leave even earlier. Okay, so it's very important to be punctual and be early. You should ask them where you're going to park. All right, so you want to make sure you get a parking spot. You need to know where to go. Ask who is the contact person and get their cell phone number in case of some emergency. So if you're running late, if all of a sudden there's a major traffic jam, completely unexpected, and you planned everything, you left early, you checked the traffic, everything, that's not your responsibility, it's not your fault. But you at least have to let that person know that, you know what, in advance, I'm not going to be making it. Get, Brother Faisal, backup khatib, get him ready. He's got at least 20 minutes to prepare, so he knows and he's ready to go. If there's any last minute changes, there will be last minute changes. So you plan your khutbah, everything is good, you arrive, and what usually will happen is there might be a funeral prayer. So it might be a janazah. And if there's no one else there, you're going to be asked to lead the funeral prayer. So either you opt out and say, no, I only did a khutbah training workshop. I didn't do a janazah workshop, So that's sorry, man. It's not going to happen. Fine. Or they're going to ask you to request for dua. So some masjids will give you like a list. Sometimes like a list of like 7 people, Sister Maryam is in the hospital here, and you have to read this whole thing out. So you have to incorporate that either into your khutbah or after the prayer is done. And then they may ask you to make announcements as well, so you should be prepared for that. You can, you don't have to do fundraising. So they might ask you though. But so you can opt out and say, no, I don't want to do any of these things. But it's normal for a khatib to get asked, especially if you're going to a masjid, to do these type of things, and you'll learn how to do that. And with regards to honorariums or reimbursements, okay, if you're short on money and you're driving somewhere far and you're like, I really could use reimbursement for my gas because I'm driving out to give khutbah, that's a very reasonable request. So if you're driving somewhere, it's like $20 for gas, say, hey, can you guys cover my gas, vehicle expenses? Go to the IRS website, check out what the standard mileage is. It's like 53 cents a mile or something like that. Calculate how much you're driving, and it automatically calculates what the gas and the depreciation of your vehicle would cost you if you're really strapped for cash and it's a money issue. And say, look, it's only fair. I'm driving this many miles back and forth. I think I should get the mileage compensation according to the guidelines set by the Internal Revenue Service. Okay, and that's reasonable to ask for. What ends up happening is later on, if some people will actually offer an honorarium is like a gift. Usually it's a monetary gift. So some places, if they like your khutbah, or if they like you, or if they want to thank you for taking your time out, they may give you a little gift basket. They may give you a coffee mug, or they may actually give you like some money as a gift for coming out, taking time out of your schedule and all of that, and that's called an honorarium, right? So when it comes to taking honorariums, there's nothing wrong with taking an honorarium. It's a gift that someone is offering you. There's nothing wrong with giving the honorarium back as a donation to the same masjid or the same place if you think that they're in need of that, or you go to like not a very affluent community, and they're offering you something and they really thank you, and you say, no, I want to donate this back to you. So you can do that as well. If you're really smart, then you'd probably take the money and then redonate the money back so you can get a tax deduction, if you're interested in that. All right, depending on where your income level is, that's what a lot of people will do. But otherwise, taking honorariums is fine. Requesting an honorarium is a different thing. So it's become part of the culture now that so many places give honorariums that it's become customary to request an honorarium. Now, requesting an honorarium is also not a problem in and of itself, but it can become a problem if your intention gets confused. So your intention should be very clear, and the intention why you're giving a khutbah is you're fulfilling a need, not a need that you have for your own personal growth and development. You're fulfilling a need that the Muslim Ummah has. Right? That should be your primary intention, is that, someone needs to do this, I'm taking on this responsibility. If you start requesting an honorarium because this starts becoming like a job for you, a way of making extra money, I only make $15 an hour at my work, and I can make a lot more money, man, giving khutbahs, this is great, your intention is going bad. Right? So you should probably stop giving khutbahs and then reevaluate, get your intention back to where it should be, and then do it again. If you're someone who's extremely busy, you don't have very much time to dedicate, and you say, look, the only way I can make this worth my while, in a sense that, be able to go to such and such location is, look, I need to wash my car, and I need to mow my lawn, and there's some lights that need to be fixed in my home. All right, that's going to take me 3 hours of work. If I hire someone to do that, it's going to cost me $75, right, to bring a handyman or something to go and handle all of that work. Okay, let me go ahead and request a $75 honorarium. I'm just giving you an example. $75 honorarium, so I could take the 3 hours that I would have dedicated for that. I can pay some handyman who can do that, because there's so many people who are qualified to do that. I don't have to do that. Now I can fulfill this need that exists in the community, and that's why I'm requesting this honorarium. So that would be an example of something that is an understandable intention, and it's not going to, cause a problem with your intention of, trying to get money out of this or making this a lucrative career for yourself. Okay? But as beginning khatibs, my advice to you is, unless you're really, really in financial difficulty, in the beginning you should not request an honorarium, and in fact you should not request a reimbursement even, if you can handle that financially. But if someone gives you something, just take it out of respect. They give it out of love, take it. If they don't give it out of love, they're giving it like out of spite, just say, keep your money. So I did this for Allah, I didn't come here for any of that stuff. Okay? Any questions on that? Any questions on this slide? Yes.
About the khatib itself. Some cultures, I was told that they wouldn't let you perform khutbah if you do not have a beard.
Yeah.
Is that a requirement?
We're going to cover all the requirements coming up, inshallah. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So, introduction to the rules, the fiqh session. Basically, this is the rules of giving the khutbah. Okay. So, first of all, why? Right? Why does the khutbah exist? Okay. So let's go back a little bit, define some terms. Jum'ah prayer, or Jum'ah is Friday. Okay. Jum'ah means Friday, and there's something known as the Jum'ah prayer, which is the Friday prayer. And in the Friday prayer, there are 2 khutbahs, which are 2 sermons, and then there's the prayer. Okay? So why did Allah institute the day of Friday, and why did He institute a Friday prayer? Well, the reason is because we pray 5 times a day throughout the week. Sometimes people can make it to the mosque, to the masjid, on a regular basis. Sometimes they can make it once. Sometimes they can't make it at all. So what happened was that the Friday prayer, the Jum'ah prayer, is a day at least once a week where Allah wanted the entire community to gather together and to be able to be together, to meet, to see each other, to get some admonition and to learn some knowledge. And also it's a display of potential power that the Muslim community has, and that they're united together and all of that stuff. So this is like the minimum weekly gathering that's been set forth for Jummah prayer. That's what the reason behind Jummah prayer is. Okay? That's the reason. Now, a quick note on some of the things we're going to be covering right now. There are some different opinions among scholars. And when there's a different opinion among scholars, if you encounter something different, or if you want to follow something different, you consult with scholars for advice on what you are allowed to do and what you should do. And when you are given options, this is what you're allowed to do, don't pick just yourself. Consult on what is recommended, what you should do. Okay? So who needs to attend Friday prayer? It's all adult males. All Muslim adult males need to attend Friday prayer. It's mandatory on them, with the exception of those who are sick, those who are traveling, or those who are going to encounter a very significant difficulty in their life. All right? What is a significant difficulty in their life? What if you're taking a class at school, and if you don't attend this class, attendance will be docked from your grade, and you're going to go down 20%. Is that significant difficulty that for this quarter you're going to skip Friday prayer? Significant difficulty? What would happen if you didn't take this class? You took another class. Huh?
If it's, you won't graduate.
It might delay your graduation 1 quarter. So So, so, huh?
Maybe it's fair difficulty.
So the thing is, we're talking about significant difficulty.
Significant, well, I mean, again, it's hard to say.
Yeah, so here's the thing. So that is usually something that's not a significant difficulty.
Right.
Not in my opinion. Like it's not gonna change your life like significantly. You delay a quarter, people delay a quarter, they delay a semester because they don't know what they want to do in life. You know, or they want to have a little bit more fun, or they don't want to take 16 units, they want to take 12 units. They do that on a regular basis. So taking another class or finding a way, or even use a way to even like argue with your teacher or go to administration or get a letter. I mean, there's ways around this usually, especially in the state of California, right? And in most parts of America. You can get around it. Now, if let's say you're in a circumstance and in a situation where you've been studying for 2 years and there's an exam that you absolutely have to attend and they will not give you any religious exemption, and your entire 2 years are going to be completely wasted and you will fail everything, and that will cause a problem for your future, being able to get married and your family and getting a job and all that stuff. Now that's significant difficulty, right? So on that day, you can either get your friends to pray Jummah outside, or you can pray Zuhr that one day because it's really going to cause a problem, and you can go and attend that one exam. But usually when it comes to like a class or something, my boss wants me to work on this project, you have legitimate grounds to get out of that. So yes, there's difficulty of either delaying your graduation, difficulty of confronting your boss, difficulty of filing a lawsuit against your company. These are all difficult things, but they're not that significant that they're going to be considered to be an exception. Okay, so that's just for your own knowledge. That's not that relevant to being a khatib. So all adult males must attend. It's recommended for women to attend to learn something too. Recommended for young people to attend as well. But males need to attend, right? So that's who's going to be attending the khutbah on Friday, or attending Jummah prayer on Friday. That includes you. So you got to attend anyway. So if you're going to go to a place and you happen to be the most qualified person, you might as well give the khutbah, right, if no one else is qualified to give it there, because you're going to be praying anyways. All right. The timing of the prayer, the timing of Jummah prayer, is the timing of Zuhr prayer. It's the same time as Zuhr prayer. Zuhr prayer starts right after high noon, what's called zawal. High noon is when the sun is at its zenith, at its peak. So right when that crosses, you check your prayer app, you look at Zuhr time. It starts at that time and it ends at the end of Zuhr time. Okay? Now the end of Zuhr time has two different opinions. One of them is that an object, when you put it outside, the shadow length is equal to that object, approximately. And then the second opinion is that the shadow is 2 times the length of that object. So there's 2 opinions there. What should you do when there's a different opinion? Go with the opinion that either your scholars have, your teachers have told you to follow, or you go with the opinion that the location follows that you're going to give the khutbah in. Okay? Now, there are some exceptions to the rule. There are also some scholars say that this time for Jummah starts before Zuhr time comes in. Right? So you can actually start Jummah like an hour before the Jummah, before the Zuhr time comes in. That's an opinion. And there's another opinion that it goes all the way past Asr time, all the way back to Maghrib time. Okay? Now, you shouldn't try to follow those opinions on your own. If there's an established practice and there are scholars who are reliable, who are following that opinion, and they have some reason why they're following that, you can go ahead and adjust and adapt and follow that timing that exists, even if you don't personally hold that opinion. So if you go to our masjid, for example, which is down the street, Islamic Institute of Orange County, we start our first Jummah. We have 2 shifts. We start our first Jummah before the time of Dhuhr. I don't hold that opinion. I don't think it's the correct opinion, but I'll still give the khutbah because that is the setting, and it's a valid opinion that scholars have held. Okay? So that's kind of the way you deal with this issue. So timing is generally Zuhr prayer, and you want to try and keep it within Zuhr prayer whenever you can. The minimum number of people that are required to have a khutbah is 3 to 4. Okay, 3 to 4 people. 3 including the imam, or 3 excluding the imam. So this, again, there's two opinions. There's different opinions as well, but I would say to be very, very safe, 4 is fine. And if you know what you're doing, 3 is fine as well. But, all right, so that's the minimum requirement of people who need to be there, and that's generally, those are people who need to attend the khutbah, right? So if you have like 2 little kids, 1 guy and an imam, that's not sufficient, because the 2 little kids are not required to attend. Right? It's like 2 babies there, and that doesn't count. So you need to have basically 3 or 4 males, 1 giving the khutbah, 2 or 3 listening to it. Okay, where can you give khutbah? Anywhere. There's no requirement. You don't have to give inside of a mosque. You don't have to give it in a specific location. So it could be anywhere that you're allowed to pray. All right, so you can do it outside in a park. You could do it in a parking lot potentially. All right, so khutbah can be given basically anywhere. How do you perform it? Now this is where the details come in. Okay, how you perform it? There are 2 other questions first. Yeah.
Yeah, with regards to the timing. So you said if there's an earlier khutbah, isn't there a danger of that running into the time of zawal when you have to pray?
Yeah. So the opinion, which is of the Hanbali school, that says you can start the khutbah before Zuhr time, they disregard the noontime prohibition on Friday. It doesn't even matter. Any other questions? Okay. So how do you give it? There's 2 sermons and then there's a prayer. Okay. So you're going to give 2 sermons, which are 2 speeches basically, and then you're going to do the prayer. So here's how it works. Okay. First thing you do is that the adhan, or the call to prayer, is going to be called before the sermon even begins. So this has nothing to do with you. So it's going to happen, let's say your khutbah is starting at 1:10 p.m. Okay? Most likely, the mosque or the place is going to have, let's say you have a very small place. Someone has to get up and call the adhan, give the call to prayer around 1 o'clock or so. Right? 1:05, 1 o'clock, whenever. Right? It has to be somewhere before that. So they're going to give 1 call to prayer. Once the call to prayer is done, if you're the khatib, you're called the imam for that period of time. If you're going to go up and you're going to give the khutbah, you get up to go give it. Now if there's a mimbar, which is like a few steps going up, you can walk up those steps and you're going to greet the audience by saying Assalamu alaikum, and you sit down. And then what's going to happen is the guy who's calling the adhan, he's going to stand right in front of the mimbar or right next to it, and he's going to call a second adhan for the second time. Now if there's no mimbar, you just go and you can sit down. You just walk up to wherever you're going to be speaking from, and you greet the audience. You say Assalamu alaikum, and sit down on a chair. You can sit down on the floor. It doesn't matter, where you're sitting down really. You just sit down because your thing is done. So you're waiting till the mu'adhin, or the person who's calling adhan, finishes. So they're going to call the adhan, and you're going to wait. As soon as the adhan is done, and they're going to be near you. As soon as the adhan is done, you're going to stand up. And now, the moment you stood up, you've just started your first sermon, your first khutbah. Okay? Once you start this first khutbah, you're going to start by praising Allah. And I'm going to tell you all the wording in a little bit. You're going to praise Allah, and you're going to send peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And you're going to do all of that in Arabic. Okay? One moment. You're going to do that in Arabic. And then you're going to say the testimony of faith, which is the shahada, the declaration, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. And then it's recommended you're usually going to quote like 1 verse of the Quran in Arabic. And then you're going to say, amma ba'd. Amma ba'd is like a transition statement, which means, okay, now I'm moving on to the next point, or as to what follows. All right? And then you're going to start the rest of your lecture. Now the rest of your lecture, all that part in the beginning has to be in Arabic. The rest of your lecture, it can be in the local language. So you can give it in English, basically. And what you're going to do in that part is you're going to give some admonition. Admonition means you're going to give a reminder to people, something that motivates them, reminds them to be good Muslims. And once you finish that, you're going to end with a dua, which is a supplication. And the imam does not raise their hands when they're making dua. They keep their hands down. Okay, everyone else can raise their hands, but the imam doesn't raise their hands when they're making dua. So that's the first sermon, the first khutbah, and when you're done with that, you're going to sit down. Either sit on the chair, or you're going to sit on the floor, you're going to sit on whatever you're going to sit on. That is the first khutbah, and that first khutbah is complete. Okay? Questions?
Yeah, so you said that right after the adhan and then the khatib stands up and starts giving the sermon.
Yes.
Is there time for him to like stay sitting and do the dua after adhan?
Yeah. So after the adhan is done, you can stay up to, you shouldn't stay more than like a minute. Staying 10, 20 seconds is not a problem. Okay. You can ask Allah to help you, remove your fear. You know? Well, don't cause me to forget everything that I reviewed. All of that stuff. Yeah, I do that sometimes. Alhamdulillah. Yes.
Can you go over it once again? There's the first adhan.
Yeah, I'll do a quick recap. First adhan is called about 10 minutes before, 5, 10, 15 minutes before you even start the khutbah. Okay? After that's done, Imam walks up to where they're going to speak, says Salamu Alaikum, and sits down. The guy who gave the adhan, he's going to give a second adhan. Then once he's done, he's going to sit down, Imam is going to stand up, Khatib is going to stand up, and he's going to start the khutbah. Praise Allah, Alhamdulillah, he's going to ask salawat, prayers on the Prophet, say the testimony of faith, quote one verse in Arabic maybe, one verse of the Quran, say amma ba'd, transition into the content of the speech, and then conclude with the dua. And I'm going to tell you what that dua would look like. I'm going to give you a very basic, simple sample of what it's going to look like. Don't worry. Okay, so that's the first, and then sit down. And you're done. First khutbah is done. Now, how long does the first khutbah last? There's no time, actually. The first khutbah can be longer, it can be shorter than the second khutbah, that doesn't matter. They can be both equal length, that's perfectly fine. What's become common in our society is that the first khutbah is usually very long, and it becomes like the lecture part. So the first khutbah is usually like 20 minutes, and then the second khutbah is like 5 minutes, right? And it's kind of like either a recap, or sometimes not even a recap, and you just make a dua and a supplication, and you're finished, and you conclude. Right? All of these things are valid. You can mix it up. If you want to present 2 topics, you can do that. You want to present 2 different topics, you can split it half and half. All of that works fine. It's valid, right? We'll talk about putting 2 topics or not, if that's a good idea, but you can do that potentially. No.
So there's also a difference of opinion on how to structure it as well, right? Because not everybody does the 2.
Yeah. So there is an opinion that the khutbah can only be in Arabic. Okay. So there are some masjids. Probably not some, sorry. There's a lot of masjids in the country, and there's some masjids in Southern California, most of them don't, but some that say the khutbah has to be completely in Arabic, 100%. You cannot say a word of English, okay, or any other language. So what's going to happen in that case, if you ever have to give a khutbah in that masjid, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to give a lecture before the khutbah. And that lecture is just going to be normal, like you're giving any other lecture. You could just say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Start entire English lecture, you finish. Then comes the adhan, then you're going to go up, and then you're going to start the khutbah, and the whole thing has to be in Arabic. Now, if you don't know Arabic, that becomes a major problem, right? So what you're going to end up doing is, you're going to have this super condensed khutbah, and you're going to praise Allah, you're going to send peace upon the Prophet, you're going to say all of that, and when you say amma ba'd, after you say amma ba'd, meaning I'm transitioning now to my topic, the entire topic has to be in Arabic. So if you don't know Arabic, what ends up happening is people just read a bunch of verses of Quran, and they read a bunch of hadith, and then they make a really long dua in Arabic, and that's it. So there's no real admonition. The admonition is kind of built into the verses and the hadith that they're reading off. And then that's it, and then you conclude, and then you start the prayer. So if you ever have to do that, that's what you'll do. But you just, so if that masjid says, you can basically say, okay, this is going to be a 1-minute khutbah, because you want it in Arabic. So this is going to be literally 1 minute. It's going to be 1 minute here, and then 1 minute for the second khutbah, and we're good to go. If they're fine with that, fine. If they go, no, we want the Arabic part to be at least 5 minutes, and say, you're asking the wrong person, because I'm not going to be able to give a khutbah in Arabic for 5 minutes. That requires a lot of practice, right? So that's going to be challenging. That's going to be very challenging. So if you can't do that, then don't do it. If you can, and they have nobody else, and they insist, no, this is the way we do it, that's fine. Accommodate that and say, fine. I'm going to give a 20-minute lecture, and then I'm going to give a 1 minute plus a 1 minute 2 khutbahs. And then we're going to start the prayer. And that works. That's fine. Because the majority of the audiences that enforce that rule, they don't know Arabic either. So they're going to sit there for 5 minutes not knowing what you're saying anyways. So it's good. Nobody knows what they're saying, basically. You're all reading. It's good to go. So, yeah.
So, 2 questions.
Yeah.
This type of khutbah that you mentioned, is there a specific name for those khutbahs that follow this pattern or no?
The ones in Arabic only?
Yes.
They're just called Arabic only.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
The other question is, you mentioned in the first khutbah after the Shahada, the Khatib is supposed to recite an ayah of the Quran or a couple of them. I've noticed that they are typically somewhat standard, like there are few certain ayahs which are recited.
Yes, you're right. So that verse that we're going to cover, the verse that you recite normally in the khutbah, there's 2 aspects. So what you're really doing is you're supposed to tell people to have taqwa of Allah. Right? So what you're doing is you choose a verse that mentions, it combines both. So you mention a verse of the Quran kind of like for the blessing, right? It's not like a requirement. It's not an some schools of thought say it's a requirement, others say no, it's nice but it's not a requirement. The other ones say that, you're supposed to give a reminder to people. So the bare minimum reminder is, fear Allah. So you combine both together. So again, these are not all requirements. They're not all requirements. This is a recommendation, and I'll break down for you what is an absolute requirement and what is not absolute requirement.
So then this particular ayah may or may not be relevant to the topic at hand.
Correct. It may not be connected to the topic. Absolutely. Okay? So then that's the first khutbah. The first khutbah is done. You sit down. Now, how long do you sit down for? You sit down for about the same amount of time that you sit between 2 sajdas, 2 prostrations when you're doing your prayer. How long is that approximate? 4 to 10 seconds. So I heard 4 and I heard 10. So 4 to 10 seconds. That's good. So that's sufficient. Okay, that is sufficient. So as soon as you sit down, now you get back up. As soon as you stand back up, you're going to do almost the same thing, but you want to vary it a little bit. So you're going to start by praising Allah in Arabic. You're going to start by sending peace and blessings upon the Prophet ﷺ in Arabic, and then you're going to do an amma ba'd, and you're going to start either a second topic, or you're going to summarize the topic that you just covered for all the people who came late with valid and invalid excuses. And then you're going to conclude with a supplication, a dua. And once that dua is done, you're going to end with one more thing, and then you basically say, Aqim as-salah. Aqim as-salah means let's start the prayer. And you can say it in English. You can say, let's start the prayer. Now, who are you talking to? You're talking to the guy who's calling the adhan, who's going to make the call. So you're basically saying when you're done, make the call. So so what's going to happen is, as soon as you're done, you're still standing. You say, make the call to prayer. The guy is going to stand up and he's going to start doing the call to prayer, the iqamah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Everyone starts lining up, and you walk off. You walk off the minbar down, or you walk forward to wherever you're going to lead the prayer, and you stand there, and iqamah finishes, and you're going to start leading the prayer now. Okay, so that is the basics of how this is going to work, and I'm going to go through some of these things with you. Yeah.
So when we're in the sitting, 2 questions. What does it symbolize, and should we be asking for forgiveness also?
Yeah, you ask for forgiveness yourself, but there's nothing particular that you have to be saying. Okay, and what does it symbolize? I'm not sure exactly. Basically, it's just breaking. It's just giving a break. And the other symbolism is that normally Dhuhr is 4 units of prayer. So what's happening is 4 units of prayer are reduced to 2, and the substitute for the other 2 that were reduced is that there's 2 khutbahs. It's 2 sermons. Okay. So look, there's a lot of flexibility in how to deliver a khutbah. So you can really do some very unique things, and it's still valid. But you want to balance between being valid and conforming to what people are used to, because you don't want to break out too much of what people are used to, because then it's just going to feel awkward and it might confuse them, and you don't want to always do that. Okay, so flexibility that exists. The only requirements really of the entire khutbah part is that you have to praise Allah and you have to pray for the Prophet, peace be upon him. These are the absolute minimum requirements, and there needs to be some type of reminder involved in there. So you could potentially go up and say Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. You can even skip the amma ba'd part. You can skip everything. You say, you know what? Remember, you're going to die one day.
Sit down.
Make the call to prayer. You sit down. Sit down. You get up. Say Alhamdulillah wassalamun ala Rasulillah. Make sure to read the Quran. You know? Make the call to prayer. You're good. Good to go. You can do that. And that's actually happened one time. One of the companions one time gave a whole sermon. He just said, Ittaqullah, fear Allah. But in like a very powerful, correct context, you know, and it was needed, and then that was it. It was done. Khutbah was finished. But that was like, that's not his normal khutbah. Like this was a special circumstance where he did that for a reason. Yes, right.
Is there like a standard way to pray to Allah and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
Yep. There's a standard, like there's different ways. There's a lot of variation. I'm going to just give you one template. I'm giving you the easiest one, the shortest one, and if you adjust it with something different, it's perfectly fine. There's no, it's not that fixed. There's so many options that you have. All right.
Between the sit down, in between, does somebody else call another, like a azan or some kind of thing? Sometimes I hear
the sit down between the two khutbahs? Yeah. Between the two khutbahs?
Does the muazzin call something?
Between the two khutbahs?
Yeah.
No.
He's asking because I've been to a masjid when they did it.
They do it.
And I think that was your first question, was it? Earlier? Was that
did they do salawat or something like that? It was it salawat?
They brought the full adhan right in the middle.
Yeah, they do that.
Right in the center.
Some masjids in the valley that do that because it's like Hanafi masjid. So I think what they're talking about is like the person will give the lecture and then like lecture in English, and then they'll do
okay, right. So what's going on is that's the Arabic only one. So what's happening is they'll give, follow this guys. So what's happening is that in the Arabic only one, where they say you got to go Arabic only, they will give the first adhan before your lecture. I want you to differentiate between lecture and sermon. Understand, lecture and sermon. Sermon is khutbah, lecture is not a khutbah. So they're going to give the first adhan just to call people, just to make it ready, and then you're going to give a lecture. Not a sermon, not a khutbah. And what happens is, when you finish that lecture, that person might just sit down on a chair or on the floor because he doesn't, for whatever reason, and now they're going to get up and they're going to give 2 more sermons or 2 more khutbahs. So between the lecture and the 2 sermons, there's going to be another adhan. And those 2 lectures, or those 2 sermons, are Arabic only. The lecture is a lecture, it's not a khutbah. That may have been what's going on.
That's not always the case, because I've seen...
You see in between the khutbahs,
it's... In between the khutbahs, people have given the adhan.
Where did you see that?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I saw it in Arizona. I lived in Arizona.
Are you sure it wasn't a lecture and 2 sermons?
Now, I don't.
Now you're not. It may have been that case.
Yeah, I've been between the sitting. They do the azan, and also sometimes they recite like they glorify the Prophet.
Yeah, that was my question. So the thing is, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a masjid where they start glorifying the Prophet, peace be upon him. And there are some groups where they do that even after the prayer. Yeah. So as soon as they finish prayer, any day, they'll start going, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And people will all stand up and they'll start doing that and all that. So this is like a Barelwi movement. They're among the people who do it. So there's different people who will do it. So they're probably the ones who did that, if they're doing that. But it's not an adhan. Because what will happen is, if you did that, then you have a third adhan. Right? There's no third adhan in the middle there. Okay? All right. Like I said, there's a lot of flexibility. What is the length? I'll come to it in a second. What is the length of your khutbah? How long should it be? Again, it should be somewhere between 15 to 30 minutes. Try to follow the guidelines of what the mosque is giving you. Don't go over. You can go under, but I would recommend not going under by 5 minutes. Right? Maybe you could get away with not going under by 10 minutes. If you happen to be in a masjid where people come regular. Like if you're in a big city, don't go under by more than 5 minutes. If you're in a village, then it's 10 minutes, you're okay, because the traffic isn't an issue. People are not so busy. They're a little bit more relaxed. Most people will make it in on time. All right. Etiquette. Some etiquettes you should know. I mean, this is not related to the khatib per se, but this is what everyone's supposed to do. So the etiquettes, the recommended things on Friday is it's recommended, highly, highly recommended to take a bath on Friday. All right? So if you need to, then you have to. But even if not, it's recommended to take a bath. So take a shower, whatever. It's recommended to not eat garlic or onions. Or if you smoke, to smoke. Because you shouldn't be going into the masjid in those things. Brushing your teeth is highly recommended. Perfume, smelling nice, highly recommended. Dressing nice. All right, so dressing nice is very important as well. If you're giving the khutbah, you want to dress nice. So nice means different things. You should try to follow the general guidelines of the community that you're in. So if the general guidelines is, formal dress is like a suit and tie, go ahead and do that. If that's what's considered appropriate and proper there. If the general guideline is you're going to follow like a traditional clothing, like a long thobe or kurta or something like that, Moroccan style, whatever it is, go ahead and do that. So if you're going to a primarily Moroccan immigrant masjid to give a khutbah, and they're like, are you okay with wearing this Moroccan hooded cloak, or you happen to have one, it's fine. You go ahead and wear it, because it's going to help people to focus on the content of your khutbah. Right? And if not, if it's such a varied mixture of a masjid or something like that, just dress appropriately. Make sure your clothes are ironed. Make sure they're clean. There's not spots or something like that, because you're in a public position. And it's Friday, you should try and dress nice. Okay? So dressing nice is important. Grooming properly is good. Make sure you smell good. You're not stinking or something like that. You're representing Islam in front of people, and you become your socks should be all sorts of other things. Okay, and then there's no talking at all. So remember, the requirement among the people who are there is from the time that the adhan starts or from the time that the khutbah starts, no one is allowed to talk except the khatib. Okay, so that means that unless there's really an exception, like if someone comes to you and says like, hey, someone is illegally parked, we're going to tow their car. Okay, that's like really important for them to convey that, so you can make an announcement or something like that. So those type of people are talking without necessity. Otherwise, generally, no one's supposed to talk, which means they're all supposed to be listening to you. They're not supposed to be text messaging either. They're not supposed to be, Snapchatting or doing whatever else there is. And that includes you. So you're not supposed to, that involves you. You're not supposed to get other people to talk. So sometimes in a speech, I'll be asking you, like, does anyone have any questions? A khatib should never do that in the middle of a khutbah, because no one's allowed to talk. So don't ever ask, are there any questions in the middle of a khutbah? And don't ever ask, like, you want to make sure, if you're asking a rhetorical question, because you're trying to get people's attention, it's like, how many of you attended this mosque last Ramadan? And if you do that and you're not smart, what's going to end up happening is there's going to be some people in the audience, I did, and you just made them speak. So you don't want to do that. So you can say, but don't answer because it's the khutbah. But if I were to ask you this question, and you can't respond during the khutbah, but what would you say? Just think about it in your mind. So you don't want to violate this rule by getting people to speak. Okay? It's okay. Yeah.
So I've seen it recently at the masjid where the khatib asked everyone to raise their hand. I forgot the question, but if you do this and raise your hand, is that okay?
Raising hand is okay. Yeah, as long as you're not speaking. Yeah, as long as you're not getting them to speak. All right. So
going back to the ethics, if the imam says something that is not coherent or something offline, can the congregation protest to that?
So technically yes, but generally no. Okay, so yes, there was a time where a woman interrupted Umar ibn al-Khattab, right? Because she thought he made a mistake in his interpretation of a verse, and she corrected him, and he accepted her correction too, and no one got upset about it. But we should be very careful of making this a habit, because it happened where people used to interrupt khatibs, and imagine if you get that culture, we're going to have a big problem, because it's not very highly regulated, and most of the people who are interrupting are not very qualified, where this woman was qualified, and many of the khatibs are not qualified to accept interruptions either. So it's gonna cause a bad environment. So generally you should not. But if it's something so bad, if a khatib says something that's completely against Islam, if he goes, if he says something that Elijah Muhammad was a prophet, and whoever doesn't believe he's a prophet, you guys don't understand Islam correctly. Man, I would stand up and I'd be like, man, you're wrong. And I would walk out, because this is not. So in that case, something extreme like that, yes, you can interrupt.
So, like one thing that happens often is, like, I don't know if this person's like talking or not, but like if the khatib says the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the congregation supposed to reply to that, or should they say it to to themselves, like internally?
Either way, so they can say it quiet. It's best thing is they say it quietly to themselves. So they say sallallahu alaihi wasallam quietly.
And then also, like, if say the imam says there are people who are getting robbed in the community, may Allah protect us. Should we say Ameen in front of the congregation, or no?
You can say quietly Ameen, or somewhat. You can, if you say like Ameen out of impulse, like out loud, you're okay. But the best thing is to be quiet. Yeah. You don't need to give the feedback that everyone said, Ameen. There's like a lot of Ameen. People like to give that feedback, It's not really supposed to be talking during the khutbah. Yeah.
How many Jummah prayers can a Muslim person miss?
How many can they miss? They shouldn't miss a single one.
There's
a hadith about 3. About the 3.
So what is that exactly?
We'll leave that for now. Yeah, but they shouldn't be missing one. So even if you miss one, you're sinful if you don't have an excuse. If you miss 3, you're in really big trouble. So there's a hadith that talks about how bad it is. Like your faith is in trouble. It's in danger. That's what it's talking about. But you're not supposed to miss one. So some people, if they read that, they're like, I missed 2. I caught the 3rd one. I'm good to go. I got another 2. No. You are required to attend every single Friday unless you got an excuse. Right? Yeah.
This is from an audience perspective.
Yeah.
So while the khutbah is happening, some people I've noticed they come in and they might start praying 2 nawafil.
Yeah.
Is that okay or no?
Yeah. So there's a different opinion about whether you perform the 2 rakahs, 2 units of prayer while the khutbah is going on.
Right.
There's different opinions. So it's very split half-half.
Okay.
So half of them say when you walk in, you have to pray the 2 units of prayer, even if the khatib is going, before you sit down. The other ones, they say, no, you're supposed to sit down because listening to the khutbah is priority. Right? So for me, my personal opinion is that you shouldn't pray that. And not only because of the evidence, but its concentration is very difficult. While khutbah is going on, to concentrate in your own prayer, it's usually not a very good prayer that people perform, right? So even from that perspective, I don't recommend it, but it's a valid opinion. Okay.
So I'll just share along here. During Dr. Ahmed Sakar's, I used to attend his classes. He used to say about sometimes he would stop people from doing it because they walk in between and then make people move and then stand and
that's just
do not do it.
That's just bad etiquette. You should not be stepping over people and trying to get in the middle and all that. But again, that's also part of the people's fault too, because they don't fill in all the gaps. So everyone should go and fill in all the gaps, and then you're not going to have people walking over.
And then they want that space to pray, then everybody else has to pray.
Yeah, and it becomes quite annoying, standing in front of people and all that. Yeah, so that's good. All right, so that's basic things. Now, khutbah topics. Okay, how do you come up with what is your khutbah topic supposed to be? We're going to talk more about this, but basically, we need a centralized database with like khutbah topics. It would be nice especially for people who are getting training. So, I have a database with some of the imams in this area. We kind of share khutbahs back and forth. The problem is most people don't really map out their khutbahs very well. Some of them have like handwritten notes, We have scans of them and everything like that. But if you need topics, we can give you topics. There's a really good website called khutba.com. I used to go on there and like look at the khutbahs. The problem is it hasn't been updated in like 10 years. So it was an awesome concept, but it just didn't continue. So we need something like that. If you guys find something like that that's really, really good, let me know. Otherwise, someday we'll develop it. Maybe if you guys are motivated and you're preparing your khutbahs well, you can help me develop that, inshallah. So what topics would you have in a khutbah? Topics can range from anything. So you could have a topic about patience. That's a general topic, patience. You talk to people about the importance of being patient when something happens in your life, or how you respond and how you react when some family member dies, or the importance about patience, living in the Donald Trump era, or going through Islamophobia, or something like that. You can have a topic about forgiveness, about the importance of forgiving other people, or the importance of asking forgiveness from Allah. You could have a topic about backbiting and talking bad about other people and gossiping. You could have a topic about sharing Islam with other people and making sure to talk to your co-workers and how to explain Islam to them in a nice way. You can have a topic about family. People have family issues and they get into fights with one another, and how to build a strong family, how to raise a good family. There's so many different topics you can talk about, but you should only speak about what you're qualified to speak about. And that's where it becomes a challenge, right? So there's two ways to do that, right? Either one is that you've done proper research on that topic. And proper research can mean two things. You actually independently did research by going around and checking verses and books and reading something and all of that, and you wanted to talk about patience. You look at the verses on patience, you looked at the hadith about patience, you read some books on patience, you looked at what scholars had to say about patience. You combine all of that together and you say, okay, now I have some accurate content. I'm somewhat more qualified to speak about this topic. Right? That's option number one. Option number two to gather your content is you just rip the content off from someone who already is qualified to speak about that topic, and they spoke about it. So you go to a famous scholar, Sheikh Yasir Qadi, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, whoever it is that's well known, recognized, and you like their speaking style or whatever it is. You go to their lecture. They have a lecture on patience, khutbah or non-khutbah, and you take all the notes from there, and you kind of make some adjustments, and that's how you become qualified to speak about that specific subset of information on that specific topic. So that's the first part, and the second part is now that's your research, right? And then you need scholarly review. So there should be oversight, because what's going to end up happening is you take that content from wherever, whether you get it from a book, whether you get it through research, whether you get it directly from your favorite speaker online and you watch their video, and now that needs to be reviewed. And the reason why it needs to be reviewed is because you might adjust some of those things. Right? You might add in a story. You may not have understood the content properly. So you may think, I'm giving the exact same speech that my favorite Sheikh X gave. But you didn't give it, you didn't understand one part of it correctly, and now you give it wrong and you present it incorrectly. Or you may present it 100% the same way and you understood everything, but you didn't realize where Sheikh Y was giving that khutbah. It was appropriate in that location, but it was not appropriate in your location. So when you're giving a khutbah in one community, one part of the world, if that guy's giving a khutbah in London, and then you come over here and you try and give the exact same khutbah in Orange County, it may not work because the reality is different. You got to speak differently. You got to adjust certain content because you're speaking to a different crowd, a different audience, right? So that is where you need the process of scholarly review. And most people who give khutbah, they don't have anyone to review with. There's no what's called peer review, and it's not even peer review because they're not at the level of being a peer in the first place, right? But scholarly review, right? So that needs to exist. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist. And that's one of the other reasons why we're doing this workshop, so that we can establish this process of scholarly review over the khutbah content and over the style of speaking, the style of delivery, so that people are not delivering messages that are, they're not checked properly and they can cause some problems. Okay? So these are khutbah topics. Any questions about khutbah topics so far?
So scholarly review then, we would send it to you to review for us, something like that.
Me or someone, yeah, basically. me and the team that we're going to establish, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. I mean, see, here's the thing. I mean, the reality is if you go and present it to the average scholar, he's not going to have time to do it. And he's probably going to say no. So we're trying to block off some time, and I'm going to talk to you more about this, of how we're going to make it more efficient. It's easier for us to actually do this. And that involves transcription, but I'll talk to you about that in a moment. So, yes, for review, proper review, okay? And of course, the more you practice, the more you get used to it, the more knowledgeable you become, the less review you need, right? And then eventually you get to the point where, you can actually start reviewing other people's as well. And we get proper thing. Let's take a look at a sample khutbah, okay? We'll do a sample khutbah, then we'll take a break, okay? So, what would a sample khutbah look like? I'm giving you the absolute bare bones minimum, and I'm going to have each and every single one of you present it, okay? So the Arabic that comes here, first of all, the Arabic should be pronounced naturally, the way that Arabic normally comes off. Sometimes people will recite the Arabic like they're reciting Quran. I mean, that works, it's okay. But what you got to keep in mind is if you have the Arabic text in front of you, like of this thing, if you have the Arabic text in front of you, where do you pause? Right? So for a lot of people who don't know the rules of pausing, and if they don't know the meaning that well, they don't know exactly where to pause. Right? So what they may do is they'll read the entire thing, and they'll say, Alhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi. Right? That's not natural Arabic. That's not the correct way of actually saying it, because you read all the vowels, but there's supposed to be some pauses here. So you should pause correctly. So if you're going to pause, you can either... there's recommended pauses, and then there's like required pauses. The required pause is at the end of the sentence. Recommended pause, I'm just going to give you a few of them, okay? So, this is the first statement. And the meaning of this statement is praise belongs to Allah, and may peace and blessings be upon the Messenger of Allah. So you should at least know what you're saying in the khutbah, in the Arabic part. And if you don't know what you're saying, a lot of khatibs, they don't actually know what they're saying because they memorize the formula, but they can't, so you should know what you're saying. So I made it very absolute minimum here. So Alhamdulillah, you can pause right there. And when you pause, you put a sukoon on the end of that word. So Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. And you pause. And your pronunciation has to be correct. Right? So you got to practice your pronunciation. Right? It's not Alhamdulillah, right? Or something like that. It's not wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. It's incorrect. It should be pronounced correctly. Some people will say wassalatu wassalamu. So the sa and the sa, the two sads. Or they'll say wassalatu wassalamu because they're stuck in scene mode. So they won't differentiate between the sad and the scene. And that's very important to get practice on. You have to differentiate between them. So you have to say it right because you're the khatib. You're giving the khutbah in front of people. So that's how we say it. And I'm going to make you practice. Then the verse, you can recite it or you can just read it naturally. Either way works. So here's an example of a verse. You say, example, you can say, قَالَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى, which means Allah the Most High said. And then this is one example of a verse. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ حَقَّ تُقَاتِهِ وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. And that's where the pauses would be as well. Right? So حَقَّ تُقَاتِهِ. You stop, put a pause there, or you can continue, say the whole thing if you have a long breath, and you end وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ, sukoon, and you stop there. So this is what the verse means. You should know what it means. So this is reciting one verse or quoting one verse in your khutbah. After that's done, you say أَمَّا بَعْدُ. So you see أَمَّا بَعْدُ, you're not supposed to pronounce the dhamma at the end. So you stop it with the sukoon. Say أَمَّا بَعْدُ, which means as to what follows. So there's your transition. This is the bare minimum for the beginning part, okay? So we're going to practice this in a moment. Let me go through the entire thing, and then we're going to actually have you come up and practice it in front of a worldwide audience, because if we decide to post this publicly and put it on my Facebook, we can get people from around the country, just to add some pressure and stress to you, so you get over that, inshallah. All right. All right. So next, after that, after you say amma ba'd, you come up with the speech, right? So I put a little practice speech in here. You can read it later, right? Let's admit it. We all waste a lot of time, etc., etc., etc. Quote a hadith: "نعمتان مغبون فيهما كثير من الناس الصحة والفراغ." You can quote the Arabic of the hadith if you know it, or you can skip the Arabic. There's two different speaking styles. They have their pros and cons. So you can quote a hadith, who's wasting these blessings, etc., etc., etc. At the end, may Allah help us improve ourselves. This is like just a sample random speech I threw in there. This probably won't last 20 minutes. It's like the super condensed khutbah. This is like the one you do outside of the classroom. Right? This one's the one that will work. And then at the end, you say, I ask Allah for forgiveness. You ask Him as well. He is the forgiving and merciful. Now it's common to say this part in Arabic as well. What I've done for you is I've just put it in English because it's not a requirement. And if you know the Arabic, great, you can say it in Arabic. If you don't, you can say it in English. Either one works. This is not something that needs to be said in Arabic. So then after this is done, you sit down. What did we just conclude? Which khutbah? First khutbah. First khutbah is done. You sat down. What's going to happen next? The adhan? If you're in one of those masjids, yeah. You should be careful about that. But
you're going to stand up.
No, you're going to stand up. Okay, and then you're going to say, Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Same thing. Right? Wa ba'd, or amma ba'd again. Either one. I just varied it, make it a little variety. Right? So wa ba'd. It means the same thing. Alright? And then you say, we talked about the importance of time. We don't know what's going to happen. You recap, if you want, an example. And then at the end, you conclude with the supplication of dua. So you can say, let us ask Allah. Oh Allah, forgive us for the time we've wasted. Bless the remaining time that we have. Forgive the people who are sick. Those, cure the people who are sick. Those who are ill, etc. You make a nice dua, however long you want. Anywhere between 10 seconds to 5 minutes. Depends on your audience, depends on the type of people they are. And then you conclude with this. And this is not a requirement either, but you can conclude with any small statement. This is a small one I came up with. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. This is a verse from the Quran. So if you memorize it, you're just memorizing 3 verses from the Quran. So it's easier for you. Right? So what that basically means is glory be to, I didn't translate it for you. Glory be to your Lord, the Lord of might, who is not affiliated with what they're ascribing to Him, and peace be upon the messengers, and praise belongs to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Okay? So that's pretty much the translation. You can look this up. This is a verse in the Quran. You can look up the translation.
There's also Subhanakallahumma bihamdik.
Yes.
Does that also
Either one, yeah. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik nastaghfiruka Allah wa natubu ilayk. That's also fine. Whichever one is easier for you to say. So Safat, yeah, I believe so. So yeah. Huh? Yeah, I believe this one, yeah. So you can look it up and you can check the translation. All right. So that is the sample khutbah. Okay. Should we take a break and then start doing some practice? Need a break? Let's take a break. So we'll pray too. So it's 1:15. Let's make wudu. We'll pray at 1:20, and we'll be back here by. How long should we take a break for? 10 minutes? Okay. Back here by 1:30. Yeah. Huh?
Just short of the break, and so we can break.
Want to make it shorter?
And leave.
Oh, so you can leave at 2?
Yeah.
Okay, I tell you what. Then let's take a 10-minute break. We'll pray afterwards because I know people have to leave. It's 1:15. We come back 1:25, and we'll pray the Lord afterwards, inshallah. let's continue. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ba'd. So, let me answer some of the questions that came in, and then I'm going to call a few of you up, especially those who have given khutbah before, to practice this, inshallah. Alright? What is the cutoff time for people walking in late for talking? Should the person not talk while walking to the masjid? No, it's basically if you're inside the area for khutbah, then it's fine. If you're late and talking would delay you, then obviously shouldn't be talking. You should go straight to the masjid. Sometimes when you walk in late, you're putting your shoes on the rack. Some brother wants to come and say, "What's up?" Should a person talking in the bathroom while making wudu? If you're in the bathroom making wudu, someone talks, that's fine as long as it's not delaying you. Once you get inside the area where you can hear the khatib, then you should not be talking. There's a lot of political mention in khutbah. What's my opinion on this? So mentioning politics is not off limits in the khutbah generally, but you need to be very careful about doing it. Number one, because your political ideas may not be fully developed, especially if you're young. I would say if you're under 30, or actually if you're under 40, which pretty much includes me, you probably should not take a very firm political stance in your khutbah. Because 5 years from now, or 5 years from where you are, you may just change and look back and be like, man, I was too overly fiery and I didn't really think about the ramifications of what I was saying. You can have your own personal political views in private, but in public, this is really a trust. You have to be careful. And maybe what you're saying or what you believe is appropriate for one context. Maybe on campus, you can be a lot more fiery, but not necessarily in a khutbah atmosphere. So I would recommend that you can address political issues, but be very careful about taking a firm stance on political issues where there is actually debate and discussion, and the way in which you say it. Yeah, so question about recording. We are recording this. It will be available for reference for those of you who want to look at it later. Okay, but don't send it to a bunch of other people who didn't attend the seminar and who are not planning to do anything else like that, because people start claiming that I attended that seminar, Sheikh Mustafa, and that's why I'm giving khutbah. And okay, attending the seminar means nothing. Okay, that's why we have the certification coming up. So a lot of people you can attend, right? That doesn't mean that you grasped. So the certification is really important. So that's fine. All right, let's call some people up. All right, who has given more than 50 khutbahs? Be honest. 50. 50. 50. Who's given more than 25? 25? Who's given more than 10? Yeah, bismillah, you're up. Number one.
May I ask where you gave them mostly?
Oh, they're just on my campus. On your campus university.
Yeah. Just stand right here in the middle. You want to say your own Arabic, what you say, or you want to do this one?
Can I do the own Arabic?
You can do your own, yeah. So
it's
we're
a little longer, is that fine?
That's fine, yeah. We're going to show an example of what it's kind of looks like.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم يا أيها الناس اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يا أيها الناس اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد. We begin in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful.
And then your conclusion. at the end of your speech, what do you say? Before you sit down.
أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروا ربكم إنه كان غفارا.
Good. Second khutbah, what do you say?
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد.
Good. How do you conclude your second khutbah?
Make dua. We ask Allah to protect us all. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين وأقيموا الصلاة.
Good. Very good. All right. Next. More than 10, right? Bismillah.
5 stars.
All right. But you have to do mine.
Okay.
You have to do this one. All right. Just read off the computer. But present off the computer.
Yes.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. You want me to say that in English or just?
No, not the English.
Okay. قال الله تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. أما بعد.
Just do the next one.
Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. وبعد سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Good. Alhamdulillah. Good. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Good. So most of it was good. There's a few adjustments, a few improvements that could be made for both, but generally it suffices. Okay. So that's a requirement. So we need to get this down. So you got to practice this, and you got to make sure that when you're submitting your practice khutbah or your real khutbah, you are doing this correctly. So that's part of the certification that we have. So if you want the certification, which you should get, you're going to basically, I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it in a moment. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to record yourself, video recording, either of giving a real khutbah, an actual khutbah if you already give khutbah, or a practice khutbah, which would be the length of a normal khutbah, like 20 minutes or so. And you're going to submit that via a YouTube link. Don't email me like a 200 megabyte file, okay? Or a gigabyte file, high quality 4K video or something like that. Send us the link, and we're going to be checking if you're pronouncing this correctly. Now, how are you going to know if you're pronouncing this correctly? You got to get yourself checked with someone who knows the science of tajweed. So anyone who knows correctly how to pronounce these letters and the correct way to pronounce a verse of the Quran and all of that, you have to get yourself checked. So go to a friend that you have, go to someone who's a hafiz of the Quran, or go to your local imam, or you can make an appointment with me and just come and get it checked. That's fine. You can do that before you record. If you send a recording and you go, Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, you're not going to get your level 1 certification. All right, so it takes practice, it takes effort, to get through it. Okay, so that's not only the thing we're checking for, but that's one of the things that we're looking for. Okay, so practice that. It may take you a long time. For some of you, it may take you 3 months to actually get this down like solid. But you're not learning the entire science of tajweed. You're just learning this particular part, right? But then there's another problem, and that is you need to be able to lead the prayer correctly too. So you do have to learn a little bit. So the surahs that you're memorizing, you have to have them memorized with tajweed so that you can pronounce them correctly. So that's going to be part of it as well, okay? Because you're generally going to be leading the prayer. See, in some rare cases, you got someone who knows tajweed and can lead the prayer very well, but they really suck at giving khutbah. So you can team up and say, because we're in the state of need, right? You lead the prayer, I give the khutbah. And you can do that if that's going to work. Okay, so if you got someone like that, great. Then you don't need to have your tajweed down, and you're okay, and you can have someone else lead the prayer. All right, so that's a sample khutbah, and you're going to come up with an example of what to do. Any questions on the sample khutbah so far? Okay, good. So we'll talk about style. So when you are presenting, we talked about the importance of knowledge, which we covered, what you need to know. We talked about a little bit about content, which we'll get back to, and the importance of effective delivery. The Prophet, peace be upon him, he used to, when he spoke, he used to repeat words sometimes 3 times. He used to ask rhetorical questions. Like he would ask the companions, do you know who a real Muslim is? And then he would answer that question. He used to be very concise. Sometimes he did not give a very long or boring speech according to people who described his speeches. When he spoke, people were very attentive at what he's saying. 1, because he's the Prophet, but 2, because he was an effective speaker. He tried to make people not get bored by not giving a really, really long speech or by teaching them too often. And he used to pause in between so people could remember what he's saying. The point of mentioning all these things about the Prophet, peace be upon him, is to make you understand that he knew and understood the importance of effective speaking. And he practiced it in his life. So if you think that it's all about content, and it doesn't matter how you're saying it, it just matters as long as you're saying the right thing, like all the hadith that I quoted were authentic, all the verses had correct tafsir, correct explanation, everything, then you're mistaken. That's not the only thing. You should speak effectively the way that the Prophet, peace be upon him, spoke. Now, does that mean that you should imitate exactly how the Prophet spoke? No. Because his context was different and your context is different. So you need to try to speak in a way that is effective with the audience that you're going to be encountering today. 1400 years have changed the style of speaking. So today, people want to hear what's called straightforward speeches. Speeches which are a little bit more natural. They feel like it's coming out from the heart, and it's almost like having a conversation with people. So it's not something where you use very difficult words. It's not something where you have to rhyme your sentences. It's not like one of those old style speeches. Speech has changed. People like to hear something that's very simple and easy to understand. Right? So you want to make sure to adjust yourself and not have a very high formal style, because that is not something that people generally want to hear. It's not something that generally works with them. Okay, so appropriate content. First, I'm going to tell you what not to do, because there's so many things to learn about how to develop your speeches, and you're going to get better over time. And in the beginning, you should copy and just rip off of other good speakers, and you should make a few modifications here and there, but make sure you do not fall into any of these traps here. Number 1, don't mention any confusing hadith or misleading hadith. Okay, and that applies to verses of the Quran as well. So if you start quoting and you say, you quote a verse of the Quran, and that verse of the Quran talks about, and the female slaves of the what your right hands possess, that's not a verse you should be quoting generally from the Quran, unless you're going to explain the context of that, right? And it's going to take you a lot of time. So if you're quoting a part that you need, you take the part that you need and you remove the part that's not necessary. Or you're talking about the story of Khidr, and you're talking about the part where he killed a boy, right? And you're talking about that, and you want to quote that part, okay? Unless you're going to explain it, you don't just quote it and you'd be like, and then he came and he killed this boy. And you're like, see, I wanted to just talk about, the Quran does mention killing, but it doesn't mention terrorism. And you don't explain that part, you're going to be in big trouble, because people are going to leave with the wrong message. So don't mention confusing hadith. Just even if your favorite speaker mentioned it, if you think the audience is going to leave confused, don't mention that hadith. People have this wrong notion that as long as it's authentic, it's okay to quote it or to mention it. No, not if it's going to confuse people, right? Even if it's authentic, right? Also, don't mention strange stories, okay? Even if your favorite speaker mentioned the strange story, or the author of the book mentioned a strange story, doesn't mean that you should specifically mention it. Okay, let me give you some example. Imam Ibn al-Jawzi, he's a great scholar. He talks about how 20,000 Jews, Christians, and Magians, they embraced Islam at the funeral of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, the founder of the Hanbali school of thought. Imam Ibn al-Jawzi is an amazing scholar. There's no doubt about it. And he has this story, and the story basically says Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal was so amazing. And interestingly, Ibn al-Jawzi is a Hanbali, you know, obviously. So he's praising him, and he's saying he was so amazing that when he died, 20,000 people from different religions all converted to Islam. Now, what's the problem with that story? There's two problems. Problem number one, Imam Zahabi says this is a far-fetched story which has no real basis. It's not very authentic. But let's just say authentic or not authentic. What's the problem with that story? What will people walk out thinking and maybe having questions outside of the fact that it seems far-fetched?
I mean, me naturally, if I heard it, I wouldn't know who that would be. Like, I wouldn't know he was a scholar.
You don't know who he...
So I would just naturally be like...
You're right. So let's say he explained, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal was an amazing scholar and he lived in this year, and this is what happened at his funeral. Okay? People would wonder, why did they wait till he died to convert to Islam? Right? So if he was so great, why didn't they accept Islam when he was alive? Like what thing that he had to die in order for them to understand the truth if they respected him so much? So the story is supposed to explain how amazing Imam Ahmad was and what effect he had on a non-Muslim population. The problem with the story is it doesn't explain the fact that why would he have to die in order for people to, something's wrong. And if someone questions that, they're like, that doesn't seem to make sense. And it's going to leave the audience confused, at least the ones who ask questions. And at the end, it's a far-fetched story anyway. It's not even an accurate story. It's a nice story. When you first hear it, you're like, wow, that's awesome. Maybe some people did accept Islam at his funeral, Maybe they attended, they interacted with Muslims. But if you don't explain the context, all that power that's there, it's all gone because it converts to skepticism instead. So don't mention stories like that. There's another story about a famous scholar named Abdul Qadir Jailani. He has a lot of stories. He's a great scholar, no doubt. So one of the stories is that he was such an honest person, and I've read this in a book and I've heard it in a khutbah before. He was such an honest person that when he was a young boy, his mother sent him out to travel to an area, and she gave him money, and she stitched money inside of his clothing secretly. Some of you have heard the story, right? And then when some bandits came and tried to steal all of the money of all the people in the caravan, and they came to him and they searched him, and he had no money. So they're like, you don't have any money, right? So don't you have any money? And he answered honestly, yes. So they searched him again. And he goes, well, we couldn't find it. You have money or you don't have money? They asked him. So he said, yes, I have money. So they're searching him. They can't find it. So finally they say, well, you keep saying that you have money. Where is that money? And then he told them, he said, look, since you're forcing me and you're asking me, I cannot lie. My mom told me never to lie. So he told them exactly where it was. Right? So they took the money out of that and they kept the money. And then all of them felt so bad because he told the truth, that they all accepted Islam and they repented for their ways and they all became excellent Muslims afterwards. So that's a beautiful story about, being honest and all that, but it's misleading. And what's misleading about it is that this would give the impression that even if someone comes to you, imagine some Nazis come to kill every single Muslim and they put a gun at you in your family, you go, are you guys Muslim? And in this situation, you're allowed to lie to protect yourself, and there's nothing wrong. Or if someone comes and they're let's say they're chasing after someone, and they're like, is this person hiding in your home? You're like, well, based upon what I heard, the story of Imam Abdul Qadir Jailani, I cannot lie. Well, yes, technically yes. Are they upstairs? I cannot lie. Yes, they're upstairs. Gone, right? So in that circumstance, that's not what Islam teaches. So it's a nice story, beautiful story about the importance of telling the truth. But the problem is it's misleading, and it can give the wrong information. It can give people the wrong understanding of what Islam is teaching. And therefore you should not quote stories like that. Okay, not in a public gathering where you can't contextualize this. All right, so it's a nice story. Someone may have mentioned it. It's in a book. Don't put stories like that. You have a huge responsibility when you're giving khutbah. So the mimbar is the place where you're going to stand up and give the khutbah. It's a trust. It's what's called an amana. So you have a great responsibility if you're going to be giving khutbah. Think about this. For most people who attend khutbah, this is the only 20 to 30 minutes of Islam they're going to hear throughout the entire week. This is all they get. Everything they know about Islam is built upon what they're going to hear in a khutbah, because they don't get any other information. They don't get any other knowledge for the most part. So you have a great responsibility to deliver something that is beneficial, and make sure you're not delivering something that is problematic or that's going to leave them with some mistaken notions. The responsibility of giving khutbah is supposed to be for senior scholars and senior leaders in the Muslim community. So that's what it's supposed to be. That's what it used to be. People who've really matured in their thinking, in their thought, in their wisdom, in their understanding of Islam, in their understanding, when I say leaders, in their understanding of the Muslim community, and understanding what their needs are, what do they need, how do they behave, how do they deal with each other. That's what the khutbah is supposed to be. That's who's supposed to give the khutbah. So when we are giving a khutbah, and I'm including myself here, we're doing it out of need because there's a shortage of these people who should have been giving khutbah in the first place. So you have to realize that's the shoes you're filling out of necessity. So you need to really make sure you understand that. And people are quiet. They have to be quiet according to the rules of the khutbah. So they're quietly listening to you. Or if you're not doing a good job, they're quietly roaming around somewhere in their mind about something else. But they're trying to listen to you. People will at least come, and most of them will try to be quiet. So most of them will try to listen at least a little bit. So think about the fact that you have a greater responsibility because people are actually listening to you. So with all that, you do not wing it. Okay? You do not wing khutbahs. You do not just at the last minute prepare almost nothing. You don't put any effort. You don't put any time in. You're like, oh, I'll be fine. I'll go ahead and do it. Unless you're asked last minute to do it, then it's not your fault. But otherwise, what happens is, because the majority of people who give khutbah in America and in other English-speaking countries, because most of them don't speak fluent English, what happens to a lot of people who are fluent English speakers, they're like, you know what, I could say almost anything, and because my English is fluent, it's better than 80% of everyone else, right? And it might be, but that doesn't mean you fulfilled your responsibility here. You have a responsibility to fulfill. Okay, so don't wing it. You should be confident only when you've prepared. So you prepare very well, and then you deserve to be confident, not just because, you're like, oh yeah, I can handle this, it'll be fine. Don't leave people confused, like I mentioned before, and don't waste their time. So don't give them wrong information, don't leave them confused, and don't waste their time by delivering something that's not of quality. So you got to put time in to get something that's worth it. And if you find someone else who's suitable to give the khutbah, you don't have to give it. So you step back. If you walk into a masjid, you prepared 5 hours, I put in all this time, and all of a sudden, mashallah, my favorite teacher is there and he's way better at giving khutbah, you just be like, no, there's no need for me to give khutbah, you handle it. The other person is there. I was doing it on the basis of necessity. Okay? At the same time, don't shy away. So you should not shy away from giving khutbah. And that's a tough balance to draw, right? Between being shy and I know I'm not that qualified, I know I shouldn't be doing it, and I might, get arrogance and all that, versus someone's got to do it. So again, we got high schools, jails, prisons, hospitals, other places. Everyone needs to give khutbah because there's so many openings and there's so much need out there. It is the most difficult platform, I would say, to give a speech in. It's the most difficult venue in the world, because they say your audience, because you tailor your talk to your audience always, right? Now look at the audience in the Muslim community, all cultures and backgrounds. Many masjids or many places that you're going to give a talk in, there's 30, 40, 50 different nationalities from different backgrounds, right? There's people of all ages, from 5-year-olds to 95-year-olds. So it's very difficult to relate to all of them, right? And then you have strange seating arrangements, which basically means everyone's sitting on the floor. More than half of them are extremely uncomfortable and they're trying to move back and forth because they're not used to sitting on the floor. Right? Otherwise, people are going and getting the back seat, like in the khutbah, in like rock concerts and stuff. Everyone wants front row seats. in many places, in many masjids, they want the back row seats because they just want to lean their back against something because they're not used to sitting. And we could solve that with a nice little back support chair type thing. But anyways, that's what happens. And then you got very bad lighting. So in a theater, what happens? They darken the lights, and even like in a play, for example, they darken the lights on the audience, and they zoom lights onto the people who are speaking and acting and everything like that. So what that does, it helps the audience to focus and concentrate, and they cannot see one another. Like when you go to a movie, cinema, theater, or something like that. We don't have that. Don't darken the lights at all. So the lights are completely on. There's no one is specifically, there's no light focused on the khatib. So what ends up happening is everyone appears to be equally, grabbing your attention. So somebody walks through the door, and 50 people will look like, who walked through the door? You don't do that in a cinema. When people come in late, generally you don't get distracted because it's all darkened. So the lighting doesn't work very well, right? And it makes it challenging. So and the point is, yes, it's challenging, but who's going to do it? Right? So yes, there's challenges, but someone's got to do it. So step up and fulfill the responsibility whenever you get a chance. And this is what Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam did. The Prophet Yusuf, he said in the Quran, he asked for a position of authority. He said, appoint me to supervise the treasures of the land. I'm a knowledgeable keeper. Meaning that I can fulfill this responsibility in Egypt. Put me in charge. Why did he ask for a position? Because he knew that other people were not there. Other people were not capable. So if there's a need and no one else can fulfill it and other people are not capable or they're not going to do a good job, it's okay to ask for that position. So if you know that the place in which you go for khutbah absolutely sucks and people are not benefiting, it's not wrong for you to approach them and say, hey, look, I attended this khutbah training workshop and I can give the khutbah and I'm willing to. Here's the dates. If you like me to, I'm willing to do it. If you step up when there's a need, it's not wrong. And you should do it, actually. You should step up when there's a need. In fact, I mentioned that one khutbah about the guy who had the dream about the women in paradise and Allah written and all that stuff. So there was one brother, I know he's qualified, like he has potential. And he always resisted. For years, he resisted. I'm not going to give khutbah. I'm not going to give khutbah. As soon as he listened to that khutbah, he came and said, I'm ready. I'm ready. After that one, after I heard this guy mentioning his dream, okay, I'm ready. I have to do it because this is just horrible, So sometimes it can get bad, so you should do it. So what do you work on? You have to work on the content, your khutbah, the wording of your khutbah, the delivery of your khutbah, and the body language that you're going to use when you're delivering that khutbah as well. So let's talk a little bit about content. How do you choose a topic? We want to choose a topic that is relevant, that the audience is going to be able to benefit from. All right? Just because you think it's relevant doesn't mean it's relevant. So something that's relevant to you doesn't mean it's relevant to someone else. So you'll find that your own experiences color what you think is relevant, and you need to go beyond your own experience. Some people will be like, you know what? One of the most interesting things we need to address is these people who start saying salawat in the middle between the two khutbahs. But you're like one of the only people who even knows that, who's encountered that, and you're like, we should address this issue. This may not be an issue in the community, but you encountered that. Other people didn't encounter that. Or you may have a major problem in your family, and you think, man, we need to really address family issues because we have these specific things. But you may be in a community that doesn't have those family issues. Not every community has family issues. A lot of them do. But you need to understand that when you're choosing a topic and you want it to be relevant, you need to go outside of your own thinking. And to do that, you consult with people. You talk to people, you consult with them, and you ask them, hey, is this a relevant topic? Would this make a good topic? And you see if it would make a good topic or not. One of the things you can do is copy your favorite speaker. But of course, your favorite speaker may not be the most relevant speaker. Just because you like them doesn't mean it's most relevant. So one amazing speaker is Ahmed Didat. Awesome speaker, right? Does that mean you go and you take one of his speeches and you go up and you deliver a khutbah on it? Different context. He was usually very confrontational because he's debating, Christian missionaries in South Africa, and he had a specific reason why he's doing that. So you may not want to go and you're like, oh, I love Ahmad Didat's lectures. I'm going to go and document it, and I'm going to come and I'm going to talk about how Christianity is, all wrong and just blast it across the board. May not be the best style, it may not be the best topic. It depends on the context, right? There's a context for that. There's not a context sometimes. All right. You had a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm on the choosing topic part.
Yeah.
How do you incorporate current events?
Okay. So how do you incorporate current events? You can either do it in the middle of your khutbah, or you can address it either at the beginning or the end. So there's so many different ways you can do it. So you take a current event, people are dying, you can either mention in the dua, you can either mention it as part of your khutbah. Let's say your khutbah is about patience, you can talk about this event that's happening or something like that. Or you could just have a separate section and say, look, we talked about this, I want to tell you about one more important thing that's happening, and you can introduce it there. Okay? So copy your favorite speaker or a good speaker and double check that. And don't copy word for word. Okay? What you want to do is you want to make adjustments. So you go and you write down your favorite speaker's notes and think about what benefited you most. So sometimes you do look at yourself and you're like, well, what really stuck out? What I found the most powerful? So you take that, cut out some of the things you're like, oh, that wasn't really that interesting. And you can make some modifications and everything, and then you get scholarly review to make sure your adjustments are okay. So you can add a personal story, you can add a story about some current event that you read in the news, you could go check some statistics to make it seem a little bit more interesting that your speaker didn't come up with, or something like that. So make some adjustments, and make sure you over-prepare. Okay? You want to over-prepare for your khutbah. So basically you come up with 100 ideas. That's what they say. Come up with 100 ideas and discard 90 of them, and you're left with the gems. You're left with the best. So if you over-prepare, you come up with like a 3-hour lecture, and then you cut all the stuff that's not the most interesting and the best stuff, you're going to be left with the 20-minute lecture, and it's going to be super powerful, best 20-minute lecture ever. Okay? And the backup, in case somehow you forget, you zone out, you forget your other points, you got your backup as emergency, all the things that you are researching and thinking about and writing down. All right? And have someone knowledgeable check it always. Okay? Content-wise, someone should always check it for you. In terms of wording, all right, should have a very clear structure. Do not go on random tangents all over the place, right? Because then people cannot follow your message. Sometimes tangents are really interesting, but it can be very distracting as well. Have an attention-grabbing opening in the beginning. So after the khutbah is done, right? Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. You quote the verse. What ends up happening is when you're doing that, what do people generally start doing if they've heard it 100 times? They start zoning out, right? So you want to try and bring them back in after that's done. So how do you bring them back in? You kind of build up a little bit, and you have an opening that will kind of bring their attention back. So how do you bring their attention back? You can ask a rhetorical question. Like, how many of you know what the unemployment rate is? And then you tie the unemployment rate to your topic about patience or something like that. It'll bring some people's attention back, right? Sometimes there are certain words that will attract people's attention. So if you're speaking to a very young audience, it could be like, Snapchat is valued at, $10 billion. Right? You just use the word Snapchat and these people are like gone, right? You're quoting the Quran, alhamdulillah, wa salat, they're not listening, they're like zoned out. And you say Snapchat and what? Did he say Snapchat? That's what happened. I've seen audiences, man, literally I'm talking about something and all of a sudden I'm on Snapchat, all of a sudden people they look up. Did he just use the word Snapchat? Yeah, so it's like some words are shocking to people, right? So it attracts people's attention. So you got to think about that. Some bad introductions. Hi, my name is Mustafa. I'm really happy that you invited me to give the khutbah, and you guys have a really cool city. I'm so glad to be here. It's not the best attention-grabbing opening. Okay, so people are busy. They want straightforward speeches, and they're so used to suspenseful language and suspense stories. People are over-entertained. Okay, now part of the problem is it's the culture. Part of the problem is that's the way it is. So you're competing with Michael Jackson, except you're not allowed to dance or make any weird noises or anything like that. So you got to compete with all these entertainers, and that's what people are so used to. Everything else looks boring. Right? That's the thing. Everything else looks boring. It's like if you're over sugared and you just have too much refined sugar, and then you taste like natural honey. This is not sweet, because you were like injecting sugar into your system. So that's the problem. Okay. So you got to practice. We won't do the practice exercises since we have minimal time. But you might want to incorporate a call to action at the end, like an action item for people when they go home. What do you want people to do differently? Right? So when they're finished, when you're finished with your speech, you talked about the importance of patience. You talked about how Allah loves people who are patient. You talked about how people have issues and they should, be careful about this and that. At the end, you give them like something. You say, you know what? Go home and hug your family members because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Or you can say, tomorrow, make the intention when you wake up that you're going to live a new day. Or make a list of all the things that you want to accomplish in Ramadan by tonight. Right? So you give them something that they're going to do. Short term, long term, but it's something concrete so they can walk out and they think, okay, I have something to do. That I was recommended that I should do such and such thing. So you have something, like the next step after my speech. Okay? So that is the call to action. All right? And there's a lot of other things. I'm going to skip some of this because we have an entire public speaking class where we can keep going. But I want to cover this. Okay? Again, I want to tell you more what not to do. And eventually you're going to get better and better at speaking and you're going to keep incorporating more and more interesting things. What you should not do not confuse people. Again, don't use technical terms that most people will not understand. So always explain it. So if you go, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the ijtihad of the Sahaba was different from that of the Tabi'een. Okay? Most people don't know what the word ijtihad means. Most people don't know what the word tabi'een means. Sometimes you can assume that, people must know what the word sahaba means. But don't assume always. If you're in an audience where there's likely to be someone who doesn't, or even a few people who don't know this term, then you should try and define it. All right? Unless you're speaking to like a group of people who for sure know this thing, then you don't have to. So you should always try to explain terms. You want people to understand what you're saying versus trying to impress them with your sophistication. Right? So that's and you have to balance that. Sometimes you want to come off sophisticated. There's a time and place for that. Sometimes most of the time, you want them to understand what you're saying. And here's an example. So imagine you're giving a talk and you say, the Fitbit IPO is about to launch. If only shorting it was halal. How many of you understand that statement? One person. Anyone else? You understand it? Who else understands it? 4 people. 5. You got it too? 6? So what's an IPO? What's a Fitbit?
Fitbit is
a little wrist device. What is shorting?
It's like
betting on stock on opposite by selling on margin. Exactly. What you don't know technically. So yes, exactly. So the thing is, most people would not know this. So you don't say something like this, which the most of the audience wouldn't know. So less than half of you understood that. Don't mention things like that unless you're going to define what it is. So you define the part that's important, and then you say, okay, fine. All right. Don't assume that they know the story. This is the biggest thing that I see many khatibs doing, and it's not right. I see many imams doing this, and it's not right. So they assume, and they even say, you know what? You know the story of Bilal? Everyone knows the story of Bilal. Remember when he was in the middle there? I'm sorry, but everyone does not know the story of Bilal. If you think it, I guarantee you, if you survey the audience in an average masjid, 50% or more will not know the story that you're talking about. So you're like, oh yeah, and you say, everybody knows the story of when Ali went and met that guy. You guys know that, right? So let me just skip telling the story and I'll just go straight to the lesson. And that is the worst thing you can do. If the moment you start thinking of saying everyone knows, you stop yourself and ask yourself, really, does everyone really know it? And most likely the answer is usually no, everyone doesn't know. And it's actually degrading to the people who don't know. Because you know what happens? That person who's listening, they're like, my God, I'm so dumb. I'm the only one in this audience who doesn't know. But you know what? You're the problem, not them. Because over 50% of the audience doesn't know. And everyone individually thinks, man, I don't know. I'm useless. And they start going into depression or something like that. Instead of motivating them, you made them depressed. Right? You could have taught them instead.
Have you heard of anybody doing a khutbah along with PowerPoint slides?
I've given a khutbah one time with PowerPoint slides. But not in America. In Belgium. But yeah, so after I gave it, then I talked to my teacher and he said, you shouldn't have done that. And he said, it's valid, but it's kind of against the etiquette of khutbah. So, I mean, until it changes, it wouldn't surprise me if in 10 years it changes. And I'm okay with that. I mean, if it was done and the culture changes, but it's not seen as something appropriate yet. So we'll see what happens in 10 years. So don't do it until it becomes a little bit more accepted. Otherwise, you're going to have some problems. And then you're going to blame me, then I'm going to have some problems. And, again, sometimes you push culture and sometimes you go with the culture. So in this case, I wouldn't push it. All right. Matt, a few more things. Vitalize the talk. So how do you make the talk more interesting? Your microphone positioning, you have to send your voice to the back of the room. So what happens if your microphone... this is a super sensitive microphone. It's picking you guys up. But let's imagine you have this microphone. Let's imagine this is the microphone, okay? If you're holding the microphone or if it's planted, you want the microphone to be in the same place throughout your speech. So if you're going, patience is really important. This is what a lot of people do. Patience is so important. And if we don't have patience, then what's going to end up happening? And what happens? They're gone. The microphone is only going to pick up from here. This is not a omnidirectional microphone, right? So they do that. And then sometimes they go, and if you think about how big this thing really is, it's this big. They don't hear what's going inside here. So you have to make sure your microphone positioning has to be consistent throughout. Doesn't go here, doesn't go there, right? Don't go all the way. So you have to be careful about your microphone position, and you have to practice it so much that it becomes natural. So that you're not thinking about it, so you can focus on your speech. Because you're going to be focusing on everything. You're focusing on body language, you're focusing on content, you're focusing on being energized, you're focusing on remembering what you're supposed to be talking about, and then you got to focus on microphone placement. It's all about practice, and it becomes easier and easier with practice. So you got to kind of listen to the background of yourself in the microphone as well. Don't pop your P's. So what ends up happening is a lot of microphones, they're very sensitive. So if you either bring it too close or you put too much P in the P, it's going to pop. That's what happens. So if you're popping a lot of your P's, either bring your P level down a little bit or give a little bit more distance from the microphone because it sounds really bad. And there's audio, equipment and stuff to, put a screen over. What is it called? The screens?
A windscreen.
A windscreen, yeah, a windscreen and stuff. It prevents your piece from pop. Most masjids will not have that, right? Most places where you give khutbah, they will not have that. So don't over pop your P's. It's very annoying, right? Have you heard the P popping in yes, you've heard it in speeches before. Don't overdo it. And you're like, and the Prophet said that we must pray, and then it just Paul, and people are like, whoa, what's going on with this guy? All right? So you don't want to do that. All right.
Mixing the P with the B, right?
And that's another thing, yeah. Try and keep your letters correct, all right? Every word should be at the same microphone distance. And if you need to show, and you know how big this truck was? It was huge. Like this. So you bring it and then so at least while you're talking, the microphone is still there. All right? Every word is at the same mic distance. It's okay, you can move around, but you don't speak while you're moving around unless you got a wireless mic. Keep eye contact with the audience. So if you have a huge audience, try to move your eye contact a little back and forth between people. And it's hard you can't have eye contact with everyone. Some people are going to complain. Some people in the corner of the masjid, one time they complained. They're like, this guy doesn't look at us. I think he's ignoring us. I'm like, if you look, our range of khutbah is like this. So he missed us in the corner. I'm like, okay, I'll give you an extra glance in the corner. So just try to have eye contact as much as you can, a little bit with the audience, front, back, here and there. But don't just keep moving around. Don't be like, then you look like a weirdo. right? So have some eye contact, try not to neglect an area, at least once glance at that area while you're speaking for a little while. Keep your head high, keep your chin up, in the sense that, don't be like scrunched over. Try and look confident, act confident. It's going to help you be confident. And don't read from a paper unless you're going to be quoting something. So don't read off a paper with your notes. And if you have notes, we're going to talk about that in a moment. If you have notes and you need to look at your notes or you need to read, while you're talking, you can glance at your notes and quickly glance back up. Don't go like this and then read. If you need to, glance down, read the notes, and then come up and continue talking. Because it's not good practice to keep talking while you're sitting there down and people are, wondering why you're reading off the paper. All right, using notes and summarizing. So you should be preparing at least an hour for a khutbah, ideally 5 hours. Okay, now it seems like people are like, that's a lot. Who really prepares that much? It's true. A lot of people. Some people do prepare more than this, and many people they really don't put their prep time. They put in 10 minutes or half an hour or something like that. It should be. Remember the importance of this. Remember that it's a trust. You have to fulfill this trust. So depending on experience, it gets easier. But sometimes when you've given too many khutbahs too, you get like writer's block. You're like, I talked about so many topics. What's the next topic I'm supposed to talk about? And it takes time to decide on a topic. So it depends on your experience. But at minimum, you should be putting an hour of prep time before each khutbah. If you're not, then you're really not fulfilling your responsibility. You should never ever memorize word for word your speech, because when you mess up, right? If you mess up, you're going to forget where you are. It's going to become very difficult for you. So there's different styles, and you do whichever style works for you. So I'm going to give you the different style. Number one, you write out your entire speech word for word, exactly how you're going to deliver it, and then you go back and look at that paper and you summarize what you wrote. You summarize the points, and you have in your mind what you had written, how you wrote it with wording, exact wording, but that doesn't exist anymore. You take that, you throw it away, and you only keep your summary or your outline that you have that was based upon that. And what that's going to do is, if you forget on exactly how you express that sentiment, you still have the concept, and you can easily rework that sentence however you wanted to do it. So that's one way, and it works for some people. It doesn't work for other people. The second way is you don't write out your word-for-word speech, but you write out a summary of your speech. So you write out just a summary, or an outline basically, and then you condense it even more. So you make a detailed outline, and then you condense it, and the note that you keep with you is the condensed version. You throw away the detailed outline or the detailed summary. And what that's going to do is going to help you to remember certain points. It's not going to distract you so much by having to look at so much content. So you can fit the entire speech on one note card or something like that, because they're just points. So they're a condensed version of your summary. Third option is you just write out the main points. So you write the condensed version only in the beginning, but you rehearse the detail orally. So you're practicing your speech. And you want to do that. And you want to make sure, okay, now you're practicing, you wrote this one point, and then you realize when you're practicing, man, that point took 5 minutes, and the second point took 1 minute. And it looked like they're going to be equal amount of time, but they're not. So now you have an understanding of what to expect, what's going to end up happening. So you have to prepare well for your talk. And then there's those people who wing it, and it's impromptu. You do not want to do that. Don't use that style. Okay, so prepare. Unless you're recycling a khutbah, you still want to prepare. It's ideal if you can memorize your speech. Memorize your speech meaning your summary of points, your final points. If you can memorize them, it's ideal. So it depends on the time you have. If you put in 5 hours of prep time already, and then you go, I'm going to memorize my speech, it may take you an hour to memorize, and you're like, I just spent 5 hours on prep, I don't have an extra hour. If you had to choose between memorizing the main points of your speech or putting in 1 more hour of prep, which one do you think you should give precedence to?
Prep.
1 more hour of prep. Okay? But let's say you're like, oh wow, I had 3 hours to dedicate for the khutbah, I put in 1 hour of prep and I was done. You know what? Take 30 minutes, take an hour, and memorize the main points of your speech, and it's going to come out much better. It's not that hard. It can't take more than an hour to memorize the main points. You memorize it, now you don't need paper at all. It actually comes out better. As long as, even if you forget a point, you just skip that and you move to the next one.
By prep, you mean like writing out the speech?
Thinking about the topic, writing out the speech, doing the research, all of that by prep. Everything. And practicing it too. Right? So all of that combined. Okay? So, lastly, warning. Okay? Once you start speaking, once you start giving khutbah, you got to check your intention. If you start thinking that when you show up somewhere and it's like 5 people, it's a small audience, and you're like, man, only 5 people? Coming all the way here for 5 people? It means your intention has started to change. If people don't end up coming and you're expecting a big crowd and all that, you know your intention has changed from what it was supposed to be. So you need to be careful about that. If you don't get praise afterwards, so if you start becoming a good speaker, people will naturally, generally come, and some people will come and praise you. They'll be like, wow, it was so amazing and all that stuff. And that can get to your head. And sometimes you'll go somewhere and then you're like, you're so used to the praise, and then nobody comes up and praises you, and you're like, no one even said anything nice. When you start thinking that you're deserving of that praise and you start getting addicted to it, your intention has changed. So you got to change it back. Otherwise, you should take a break from khutbah and get yourself fixed before you go back. Public speaking can give you a sense of power too. So people start thinking that, because I give khutbahs, I'm a leader in the community and I'm something big and I'm, making an impact and all of that. It can give you a sense of power, give you a sense of arrogance, and it can lead to arrogance. So you want to be very careful about that. You start to love the attention of the audience, and that's like your high for the day, your high for the week, that, people are listening to you and you're coming up with the story and everyone's engaged and you're like, yeah, this is my rush for the week. You don't do it because of a rush. So your intention has gone bad. And you love the praise, or if people applause after you speak, obviously not for a khutbah, then you have to check your intention, okay? You have to go back, you have to modify it. So let's talk about certification. We were originally going to do the lectures here. It's too many people, and we decided to open it up for more people to make it easier to come in. So level 1 certification. This is the last slide. Okay. This is the last slide. Level 1 certification. Why do we have certification? So to ensure that you can do the khutbah properly. That's what level 1 is about, so that you're doing a khutbah correctly. So what do? It's going to indicate that you know the basics of the khutbah and that you understand the responsibility of what it means to be a khatib, someone who gives the khutbah. So here's what you're going to have to do. We're going to prepare an exam based upon this presentation. Very simple, short exam. You have to finish that exam. You have to pass that exam by reviewing these notes, number 1. Number 2, you're going to outline a khutbah. You're going to submit your notes, meaning you're going to submit your outline or your summary of the khutbah. Then you're going to record a 15 to 20 minute khutbah, real khutbah or practice khutbah, just in front of, your children or in front of, your stuffed animals or something like that. And you're just going to give it. But you're going to give it as if it's a real audience, okay? As if it's a real audience. So pretend that they're real people. You're going to submit the link to that video. And in addition, you're going to transcribe that video and send us the transcription. Now the reason why is because we don't have a team of scholars that can sit there and go through all these 20-minute videos as this program keeps getting larger. So what we're going to do is we're going to fast forward, we're going to see the beginning, the middle somewhere, you won't know where, and near the end to check for your delivery, your content, the way in which you're saying the words you should be saying, and then the rest of the content can be read. So it'll take less than 5 minutes to read a 20-minute khutbah. If it's written, it'll take 20 minutes to go through the entire thing. So this will speed up the process. So you're going to transcribe it word for word by looking at your own video and write down everything. Don't skip a thing. All right, put even the ums and stuff if you want to, okay? You're going to submit the transcription. So there's going to be 3 attachments that you send us. Once it's approved, you finish all of this, you can get the level 1 certification, inshallah. And our goal is to create this process where we have people who know what they're doing when they're giving khutbah, right? Again, assuming hopefully that you know about ghusl and wudu and all the other things, correctly. So that's also important. And one more thing that you're going to do in addition, I forgot to add this. you're also gonna no, you're not gonna grow your beard out. All right, so, but you should. You should. What you're gonna do is you're gonna submit a recording of your recitation of the Quran, the way that you'd be leading prayer. Okay, so you're gonna do the entire prayer, and you don't have to do it, but just you say Allahu Akbar. You're gonna say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and you recite. You recite whatever you would normally be reciting in the Jummah prayer, so we can check to see if that's good. If that's all good to go, you can get level 1 certification. Okay.
What if you're doing that tag team you mentioned, like someone is a good
Yeah, maybe we can do like level 1 probationary certification or something like that. So if you got everything else down, but you don't got the prayer down, submit it and put a little note like, you know what, prayer is not going to pass, and let me think about what to do with that, inshallah. Okay. So tell me the context. How do you have, do you have someone in your locality who can lead the prayer but can't give the khutbah? And therefore there's a need for you to give the khutbah and someone else can lead the prayer. If that's the case, just tell me the context and we might approve that. Okay? And then level 2. Level 2, why? To ensure that you're benefiting the audience. So level 2 is more about checking the responsibility of the content that you're delivering, the message, how you're delivering it, all of that. So it's more focus on that. So what we're going to do, originally I had 10 khutbahs. Someone really tried to convince me, brought me down, kind of bargained me down to 5, and then we got down. I said, look, I've made a combined compromise here. So 3 khutbahs that you've given, actual khutbahs, not practice ones now. There's going to be 3 actual khutbahs are going to be submitted, fully recorded, and they're going to be, so basically what you want to do is you want to submit first your content for approval, check that it's scholarly accuracy, everything is good. You're going to give them, you're going to record yourself, you're going to transcribe it, you're going to send it to us, and record, transcribe, send for review. And you must have given a total of 10 khutbahs after you receive level 1 certification. So you're going to mention the location in which you gave, these khutbahs, dates, approximate number of attendees. So if you've given at least 10 khutbahs, okay, and you're going to record 3 of them and submit them, we're going to check those, make sure they're verified, everything is good, then you can get level 2 certification, inshallah. Questions? Yeah.
Okay, so after the level 1 certification,
yep.
Because you talked about the calls that you get Thursday night and things of that nature. Will you be sending the people with the
absolutely.
level 1 out?
Yes,
so they can do the
exactly. Anyone who's got level 1 certification, we're going to put you in a database and we're going to start sending you out, inshallah. So when we get those calls, you be on call, inshallah.
And then the other question is, with the recording, is it visual and audio?
Visual and audio. Yeah, both. We need to see the video as well.
Okay.
Visual and audio.
Is this going to be on Canvas to do the exam and all of that, or
no? No, not Canvas. We'll do like a Google Doc type thing, something easy.
And also one more question. So if we refer to ayah in the Quran during the khutbah, is it necessary that we recite the ayah in the salah?
It's not. No. So if you quote a verse from the Quran, it's not necessary that you recite it in the prayer.
And sorry, one more.
Yeah.
And the sunnah for Zohar prayer being longer, does that apply to the Jummah prayer?
Not necessarily, no. Not in our context. So generally our context, what scholars have said is because people are so badly in need of knowledge and reminders, you want the khutbah to be longer than the prayer, and to keep the prayer a little bit shorter for Jummah because people got to get back. So because of our context. So normally the khutbah, the Jummah should be a little bit longer, but not in our context. Inshallah.
So like going back to the khatib leading the prayer, like what's the precedent on that? Like, is there a
the
does
khatib
the khatib have to, or like, because I've seen obviously like people give and then they'll come down and you're like, hey, do you guys have someone to lead the prayer?
No. So it doesn't have to. So the khatib is supposed to lead the prayer, the same way that the guy who calls the adhan is supposed to give the iqamah, but it's not a requirement. It's like still valid. Okay. Here's some recommended reading on speaking. All right, so if you guys want to check out some of these books, they're nice. They can help you, inshallah. Otherwise, we have a public speaking class here at California Islamic University, which you can also do online. Some of you attended already and have done that class. Yes, any other questions?
The ayahs and everything that we're supposed to recite, I guess, to take the online exam, are you going to send those to us? Or it could be anything that we usually do, and that would suffice.
Yeah, anything that meets the requirements, you don't have to say exactly what was in this presentation, as long as it meets the requirements. Yeah.
And if I caught that correctly, you said you want the entire prayer or just what you're going to recite out loud?
Just the parts you're going to recite out loud. Yeah. If your at-tahiyyat is wrong, no one's going to recognize it.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
I'm just saying in terms of...
Yeah. No, so because we can't do the whole knowledge test, so yeah, just what you're going to say out loud.
Right.
So we can just record us leading prayer or something?
Yeah, you could even just record it into the microphone. Into
so it could just be audio?
Yeah, just audio, yeah. Even audio is fine for the prayer part.
So Al-Fatiha, Surah,
Fatiha, no, the whole thing. Sami Allahu liman hamida.
Okay, literally what's out loud.
Everything that's out loud, from the salam to everything. Everything that you're going to say out loud as an imam, as someone who's leading the prayer. Inshallah.
With the surah, like as if we're leading Jum'ah.
As if you're leading Jum'ah, yeah, with the surah, yeah, exactly. And don't go with the opinion that, one verse is okay. You'd be like, wal asr, Allahu Akbar. None of that. Just like, at least 3 verses, minimum. So, any other questions? All right, any MSA announcements or anything like that? No? Okay, so here's where we leave off. So this is the seminar. This is the workshop. This was kind of like a short one. Practice, follow through on some of these things. Send, what email should they send it to?
The videos and stuff?
No, yeah, the videos, yeah.
I think we'll follow up with an email, like to everyone that's here. I have all your emails.
Okay.
And so we'll follow up with an email, and then we'll figure it out. Like we'll follow the email, and then if we can send like the presentation as well to everyone.
Yes.
And then like we'll give instructions on how to do that.
Perfect. Okay, inshallah. So.
Deadline?
No, there's no deadline. So if it takes you 6 months, it takes you 6 months. No problem. All right, so just whenever you can. But again, we're in need of khatibs. So, and if you're already giving khutbah, it's better you get certified faster, because you want to make sure everything is good. You have review, scholarly review. Inshallah.
Is that certificate from IIOC?
No, the certificate will be from California Islamic University.
Oh.
So this is a CIU program. And our goal is to kind of make this change in the community. And eventually, I mean, like I said, some people are giving some really bad khutbahs. So unless they're intrinsically qualified because they're like leaders in the community, they're real leaders in the community, some of them don't have good talks as well. We can't do anything about that. But others who are not leaders or not like senior imams or something, we want to make this a standard eventually where you should not be giving khutbah unless you're certified. All right? And it'll eliminate people who kind of just have gone off in the wrong direction, and they're just too confident about themselves, but they don't have the knowledge. They talk about whatever random political issues and random things, whatever they find, and they're like, and they won't stop either. Even when some imams and scholars have come to them and said, look, you're saying some weird things and all that, we even get pushback from those people. Who do you think you are? I've given like over 40 khutbahs now. Oh wow, so you're something special now, right? Like, great, you're giving over 40. So we want to develop a culture where if you're not certified, the community will know this guy doesn't know what he's talking about because he needs to go through a proper program. That's everywhere, man. You're not gonna go to a surgeon who's not qualified to, cut. You're not gonna go to a lawyer who's not qualified to practice. There's standards, and unfortunately for khutbah, there is no standard. There's zero standard in our community, due to the necessity. So we're trying to build a standard and fill the gap as well at the same time. Right.
So the khutbahs can be, they have to be always recited in Arabic.
Said in Arabic.
It's said in Arabic. Yeah. And then when you're giving the speech and everything, you can give it out in whatever language?
Yes. So that's like the sample that I showed you.
So say for instance, I want to give it to the Hispanic community.
You can give it in Spanish.
You can give it in Spanish.
Yeah, as long as you get the Arabic part in the beginning, and the beginning of both khutbahs, and maybe the Arabic verse at the end of the second khutbah, you're good. Oh, very easy. It's really not that difficult.
I'll do my recording in Spanish.
Inshallah, that's fine. That's fine. That'll be good practice for me. Alhamdulillah. Any other questions? Okay. What do we have here? We got one question here. What about us watching online? Will you send to our emails for submission? Yeah, so those of you who are online right now and those of you who are here, we're going to send an email as long as you've signed up with us. Otherwise, you shouldn't even have this link in the first place. We're going to send you to your email address what's the next step and how do you submit, your information and everything, okay? All right, so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to purify our intentions. We ask Allah to help us to fulfill this need that we have in our community. We ask Allah to help the people who are giving khutbah to continuously improve and benefit people in the community. Ameen. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nastaghfirukallah wa natubu ilayk. Jazakumullah khairan. Let's get ready and pray, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum.